Shu Mo stepped on the sky. At this time, the clouds became more and more gloomy, as if they wanted to press down. At this moment, a dazzling flame flew violently in the distance, and the burning flame looked like a young man. Thunderbolt. Shu Mo raised his eyebrows. There was no one else in this appearance. He secretly said, "It seems that the Fantastic Four have already appeared, and that's right. The 5 of them went to heaven in the last draw. Hey, you can also fly. It just so happens that I am not a normal hero, but a superhero. You should raise your hand and surrender." Johnny in the Flames was triumphant, and soon after he got the ability, Shield begged to come, and he flew out impulsively. For the other 3 people to end their wrangling with Shield, Johnny even thought about how the New York Times would report tomorrow. It should be the title of how Johnny the Thunderbolt saves Manhattan, and he will be praised by people all over the world. Shu Mo looked at Johnny's eagerness, and said calmly, "Don't speak rashly, it will only reveal your weakness." Johnny, who seemed to be humiliated by the Thunderbolt, shouted in anger, "Damn it, I'm going to burn you to ashes." Johnny, who was overprotected by his sister Susan, had never been ridiculed like this, especially when he had just obtained superpower. Immediately waved his hand. A pillar of flames burst out of his body and swallowed Shu Mo under the raging fire. The extremely high-temperature pillar of fire swept across the air, and the billowing heat waves burned the clouds and turned dark red, looking like a sea of fire in the clouds. Fiery and violent energy exploded quickly, and little sparks began to fall to the ground like meteors. The Shield agent on the ground was stunned. In addition to Magneto's assassination of the president, even the criminal Green Goblin in the carnival incident only killed people with technology bombs. Now, the superpower's display of power that destroys the world can be regarded as refreshing their 3 views. Even if Daredevil and others were shocked, they took this opportunity to escape quickly, otherwise it would not be so easy to get out of the game. Have you seen it? If it is too late to surrender now, Firebolt is the strongest. The frivolous Johnny approached slowly with rebellious triumph. Thousands of degrees of high-temperature flames, boiling incomparably burning, thin air is gradually scarce burned, evaporated and changed, and even the clouds have been burned through a large hole, which is jaw-dropping. Hey, is it dead? Johnny, who went his own way, turned into a burning man and explored the falling sea of flames. The average soldier who was rich in combat would never be so reckless. But Johnny was not, he just wanted to see if his arrogant middle-aged man was burnt to charcoal. At this moment, a hand drilled out of the glorious sea of fire and grabbed Johnny, who had turned into a flame like lightning, and the high temperature above climbed onto his arm. However, it seems that the burning of thousands of degrees only made the arms light red, and it did not seem to cause any harm. It's a taboo to underestimate the enemy. Shu Mo's eyes and Sosuke's face is very flat. The toughness of LV4 brings strong defense and complete regeneration. This temperature can only make him feel the heat, not the burn. Shu Mo clung to Johnny's neck tightly, stepped on the air, and turned around suddenly, as if throwing a ball, throwing down Johnny. A bang ring of air exploded at the place where he left his hand. Call. The violent air wave quickly turned into a hurricane and attacked in all directions, immediately extinguishing the raging flames. Johnny moved away from the clouds in an instant like a cannonball, and fell down. The flames on his body were directly blown across the sky by the powerful airflow, not bright or dark, intermittently, and extinguished several times. Quickly leave. Natasha Warong shouted, because a meteor in the sky pointed directly at where they were. No, it should be said that it was a ruined building. No, no, burn faster, burn faster. Johnny, who was awake from his recklessness, was horrified, knowing that if he didn't turn into a flame man and fly again, otherwise he would fall to the ground with flesh and blood, and he would undoubtedly be a pool of blood waiting for him. Johnny, who had just obtained superpower, didn't know how deep the water in this world was. He was so unhappy that he felt that he would become the master of the flame with a wave of his hand. Ben is just a stone man. Sister Susan can only open barriers. Reed is like noodles, not as strong as him, as if he is the strongest in the world. But I didn't expect to fall asleep in a few days. Under the desire to survive, layers of burning flames began to erupt, the air became distorted, and he finally turned into a flame man. However, the force that pushed him still made Johnny crash into the ruins, like a meteor falling to the ground, and a wave of horror spread out. The ruins burned into the fire, and Johnny in the center was lying on his stomach in the pothole, and flames spewed out of his mouth like a substantial liquid. However, this is not over yet, and the sound of several stars lit up in the sky, piercing the night sky and hitting down. Sir, this is a high explosive reaction. The shield agent who withdrew to Yuan said in horror with one person holding the instrument. Stop. A blue light curtain instantly appeared on Johnny's head. Bo Ball would not listen to its orders and slam it on the barrier. Boom, resounded across the world, a vast expanse of whiteness, and then a pillar of fire that covered the entire ruin rose into the sky. The billowing black smoke dazzled from the fire, the surrounding rubble was all destroyed and disintegrated, and the shock wave of dust and soil burst out with the sand. The lifeboat stretched out the barrier, hitting a claw from the bottom, and slammed into the ground to spread it open. "Pay close attention," Hawkeye called out hysterically, but the faint voice was overwhelmed by the overwhelming wind. The loud noise like a mountain collapse in the ground cracked, deafening. Shu Mo pushed his glasses with his fingers, and looked down at the entire ruins covered by black smoke, which had been wiped out into huge potholes. Under the reflection of the lens, Shu Mo squinted his eyes. Really tenacious. The full version of the white wave ball can destroy a city with 3, even if it is only 3 levels, it still has a tenth of the power. The Fantastic Four blocked it. I saw Johnny's body being blocked by a rubber mesh. Susan was sweating profusely, with a blood stain on the corner of her mouth, panting and caring. "Ben, how is it? Okay." The stone mankind made of crimson rocks crossed his hands in front of him, his entire front body was burnt to black, and he coughed dumbly. "Fortunately, it just hurts." After speaking, he fell heavily. "Book." Reed and Susan hurriedly rushed up and shouted. Johnny, who couldn't make any sparks, got up at this time. He just returned from the edge of the ghost gate, regretting and guilty, crying with tears on his face. "It's all my fault, it's all me, it's all because of me." He's passed out in a coma. Reed took a test, and finally let go of his heart a little. Not far away, there were bursts of buzzing sounds from high in the sky, several fighter planes flew at extremely fast, and there was a huge shadow in the clouds further away. "Because of the language you despise, you didn't hear what I said." The sound of the dark, but extremely clear. Everyone looked up, and the Commander Hill and Chief Non-Chief of the aerospace carrier looked at Shu Mo in the ultra-clear picture on the big screen. Shu Mo stepped into the dark clouds, looked down condescendingly, smashed his glasses, star-like eyes, and said calmly. "From the beginning, there was no one in the sky, superpowers, mutants, or even gods, but this unbearable window of time for the throne in the sky is coming to an end. Next, I will stand at the top. Midtown High School." Peter walked alone on the way out of school. Harry, who used to be with him, has now dropped out of school to manage the Osborn enterprise. Mary, who was a goddess, has been by Harry's side all the time. He didn't tell anyone that Green Goblin was Uncle Norman, and to outsiders he was as missing as Tony Stark, and there was still a glimmer of hope for Harry. But Peter still doesn't know who rescued him, whether Uncle Norman really rushed to the street, all of which was left behind by the current Peter. Because today is a new day for Marvel Comics. Shinigame's Naruto, which was put on the new official website a few days ago, is really fun. Although it is a small game, there are several new characters in it, namely Naruto's Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Hitaki Kakashi. And Shinigami's Sado Yasutora, Inoue Orihime, Ishida Uryu. According to the official announcement, these characters are all characters that will appear in the next issue, and they promise that each update will be one step faster than the release of the comics. This made the fans excited, and they poured into the official website to play small games. The graphics are not very delicate, but with the ninjutsu and spiritual power release of the 5 Flowers 8 Gate, it is simply fun to play. There is even a big touch to guess the next plot direction through the skills released by the characters. But it's all foolish. Such things as Rakery, Great Fireball Technique, Crescent Sky Chong, 3-Day Shield, etc. can be said to be diverse. Shu Mo deliberately set up a forum communication function on the official website, and a large number of fans rushed in, as if they found an organization to remind them all, and the traffic flowed straight up. The outside of the bookstore was already crowded with people, and Peter slowly followed behind, but he saw the familiar figure in front of him. Dave. The man turned his head when he heard the words, and the two laughed face to face. "Peter, are you coming in line too?" "Certainly." Dave is a curly-haired boy who is bullied by others because of his weak character, just like Peter before. "It's me." Dave quickly bought 2 magazines, and took the lead in turning over Boy Jump, and new characters appeared on the cover. A black hedgehog with reddish hair and golden bangs, the height of a primary school student, with a golden brick hanging around his neck. Sure enough, there will be new comics appearing in every issue. Dave read it with a smile and stood aside. When Peter bought it back, the two walked side by side for a while, watching them with gusto, and when they were separated, they turned to a page of a new comic. What makes them strange is that there is a card on this page, wrapped with plastic film. "Huh? Peter, I have a card here, it's weird." "I have it too, but it says chestnut balls, and the pattern looks good." Peter raised the card. "Kaido. I wrote the light shield sword, the pattern is completely different from yours." Dave scratched his head and said in surprise. Will it be related to the new comic? The two people who were going to be separated stopped at the edge of the wall and looked down. Peter seemed to have forgotten his Spider-Man identity at this moment, and he was completely focused and alert. I also didn't notice that there was a cloud of dark liquid on the eaves slipping into the backpack. Edward still bought back the comics as usual, turned on the computer, clicked on Twitter and the official website forum, and one of the top posts caught the eye, which was compiled by the official administrator. Monster Card Duel, a game linked with the new comic, Yu-Gi-Oh! New comic. Card Duel. Edward is a little confused about how the game and comics are linked, and they are also linked. It opened quickly. He did not rush to the new comics. As a professional comic critic, he cannot be affected by the promotion. He is in his usual state. First of all, Sonic's latest words in One Punch Man, which were mentioned in the upper part of the story, were vividly expressed under the swift and violent speed of the exquisite painter, and then came across Saitama because of a mace who didn't want to work. Seeing this, Edward's interest came. This Sonic looks weak but has amazing speed. Will Saitama fail to fight? A little expectation. Sure enough, the two started to F*K, and Sonic's expression suddenly changed to a devil-like smile, a little scary. But Saitama said, you can see it by looking at your innocent smile. Edward touched the non-existent cold sweat on his forehead, and spit out fiercely. What kind of innocence is this? Next, Sonic officially launched an attack, turning into white light moving at high speed among the trees, without even a shadow, and kept jumping close. Saitama's attitude also began to change. Even though the painting is still simple, it seems to be a bit slow. Edward took a brief sip of the coffee, and turned his mind slowly, without missing any details, just as Sonic was about to launch an attack from behind. Saitama looked back abruptly, forcing him to kick it with the wind blade, but the next second, Edward's eyes glared and his legs were closed, with a strange feeling of speechlessness. Sonic was shot and his eyes burst with bloodshot eyes, and Edward couldn't bear to look straight. Sonic, can't afford to provoke, can't provoke. Edward turned over, and the coffee he was holding suddenly shook, and brown liquid spilled out. He trembled and finally put the cup on the table, with his eyes resting on the cartoon, and he spoke in a deep voice. Heroes Association. It's breaking again. No, this time should be reshaping the definition of the world of group heroes. Shumo, what are you expressing? Before I only stayed on Saitama who was interested in it, but now I define this group. It's really a terrible thought. Edward gasped in horror. The clue that the entire army of the Shohehui will wipe out all this is at the end of the shield. Trident headquarters. Collison didn't stop from last night to this morning. There were too many things last night. Why did the hand-to-hand association cause an earthquake? And this person? Secretary, this is information. Where is it? Why did Daredevil and others appear underground? What is their contradiction? As Daredevil and others fled, Nick Fury sat in a chair and took it over to take a look. Boom. Shield. Bureau must look for it by itself. Other than that is the Eastern character for self-proclaimed Aizen Sosuke. Nick Fury slapped the table fiercely, his swarthy face darkened more thoroughly, unable to describe it in words. Not tolerate. Collison handed over the information with an ugly expression. Bad. Backed by the Security Council, as the largest official institution on the planet, you can get whatever information you want. Don't look at Jin and call it the Underworld Emperor. Black and white business is all over the place. I didn't know who was watching him until I died. As long as it has existed in the world, more or less information will flow into the data, he will not be frustrated. Secretary, except the library. Magic, mutants, aliens, vampires, etc., although many do not know, they are not ignorant. There is no such person in the search for a strategic national defense attack. Collison hesitated to call for nothing. Nick Fury furiously picked up the data card. There was only one name and a photo on it except the time. The Skuru invasion occurred in the 1990s. Fortunately, we compared the information database and collected data from various countries. The key points were not missed, but they could be stopped overnight. Continue to investigate. If there is another alien invasion, the team plan must be advanced, and Tony's whereabouts should be found out quickly and said, could it be an alien that suddenly appeared? It's like 90 hours. Nick Fury waved his hand when he heard the words, and he was a little frustrated by the wave of unsettled waves. When Collison left, Faye was Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel and just thinking about the time when Chief Ruo took out the BB machine he carried with him, and his expression was unpredictable. Aizen Sosuke is so powerful, he has only seen this power in Captain Marvel. Come on, it's not true that what we lack in S.H.I.E.L.D. is the person carrying the banner. Natasha, are you here? As soon as Collison went out, he saw Natasha in front of the French window in the corridor. Natasha blamed herself a little. It's nothing. Saitama. What Saitama? It's nothing, it's just a bit more tactful that you won't set up a strong enemy for S.H.I.E.L.D. Can't say that. You have done a good job, and the age of comic games is younger than her, and Captain Steve is only 8 years older than her. If Coulson has Saitama in a hurry, it would be nice. Collison exhorted, and then felt a little bit. Looking down at the door, no one immediately closed the door and looked happily. The new issue was bought by him this morning. I will leave first. Natasha and Collison looked at One Punch Man differently. As a captain who has been admiring the captain since he was young, Saitama is a renegade, hurriedly ran into his lounge with a crooked door, pulled out comic magazines from under the sheets, patrolled, and even just wanted to shout after reading. Even if I never get promoted, I won't be promoted again. Look at the second story. It's so fragrant. Of course, Collison and other readers like it. In fact, Collison took the touch to read at the beginning. Saitama's interests were different because of his dislike. What he liked was the power of Saitama. Collison once wondered how perfect the captain would be if he had this power. Hell's Kitchen Law Evil Tao often ignores him, but asks a little surprised, "You also?" Daredevil Matt bought 2 comic magazines under the suspicion of the bookstore clerk. Matt can like the above description of Ghoul through subtle touch, which is too realistic. Punishing this method is very slow for comics. The Punisher turned in through the window, and Matt had become accustomed to his own opinion. In his eyes, ghoul cannibalism is just like evil people, and half ghoul is just going astray and bought. Can you not buy it? It's not easy for such a strong man to draw comics, But the next few words overturned his notion that the appearance of Hina she and Ryo's son and daughter. We are a ghoul searcher who has read Edward's Twitter and we don't agree or deny it. He has an official. Now the situation here is very dangerous. Please leave as soon as possible. Mother. Hina, run away. It's Kazuko, and a trace of someone worth saving. Next is my job. Come on. Hurry up. Kill her. HMPH, the mother gave up her life for the sake of her child, It really makes me look into it, I know how to reflux acid water. You ghoul's posture that imitates human beings is only disgusting. Amen, go quickly. Don't go out, Shaoxi. Jin Muyan tears to death. What do you want to do? Sigh, despair, hatred is this expression, unscrupulously grinned wildly, the time is up. I heard a cruel voice slowly dismembering you in a trance, what do you want to say? Zinshi, scoff. The blood was spilled on the earth, like the white flowers of the other shore, which should have bloomed in heaven, but they were in full bloom in hell and suffered all the pain. Covering Hina she's eyes, I hated my weakness very much. Ryoko's kindness and simplicity still linger in his mind. The Punisher throbbed in his heart, and tremblingly picked up the cigarette and lit it, feeling uncomfortable. Sound. Puff? Go out with 5 fingers. Daredevil sighed, mask of justice, ugly face. The Punisher was expressionless, closed his eyes suddenly open, closed the comic magazine, and jumped out of the window. Alan Wah, ding dong, Edward you are following has released news, please go. At noon, the account that fans must follow posted on Twitter, the title of which made people feel fresh. Hell is empty. The devil is in the world. The new issue of Juvenile Jump has been released, whether it is Saitama hitting eggs or Cruel. The body giant explodes, or Naruto's partner appears. As well as the emergence of a new type of battle of the new comic game king. In fact, there is no such thing as the most, but he reminds me of a lot of suffering. Mato Wu Shu's actions seem to be challenging the bottom line of human nature, indeed because of his position, but such torture is indeed. Edward's tweet, I don't know. Why did he do this? Is he perverted? Or is it passed on to all the ghouls because of the persecution of the ghouls? The district has exploded. In the current situation of mutants, perhaps out of our sight, there may be a devil like Wushu Manto and appear in the world. This possibility is not ruled out. It seems that the follow-up development is over, but it seems that only half of the comic commentary has made countless comics conjecture. Flagship comment, Hina is so miserable. Even if her mother died in front of her eyes, even if she was so pitiful by Ryoko's sister, she was so kind but killed by a dog thief. Maybe there is a reason? Edward Guards. Didn't you find out? It's British. This time Jinmu knows that his concept must be changed, it is too weak. Well, it goes without saying that the heroes in the comics can be seen through the gap by covering their eyes and covering their eyes. Weak confession. Sonic's smile is paid by me. It's not the money. To put it bluntly, Edward is counseled. Before, the existence of the Saitama Association completely overthrew the definition of heroism. Why didn't Edward talk about it? Absolute selfless dedication is a complete irony of the captain's spirit. And these funds come from fundraising. Who of us donated? We only pay taxes. fart, and the current generation of parents, grandparents, and grandparents. In my comics, it can be regarded as a person's opinion, and this hero association represents the entire worldview. No, but I threw it away without paying attention. I regret it after watching The Game King. Yes, I'm afraid that Edward was stopped by a battlefield veteran at his door the next day, and he sighed silently. Just like the fanciful speculation above, he looks so handsome with a card called the Black Magic. My Captain Steve is really widely circulated, from the president to the civilians. No Americans don't know. Edward watched the tweets and made comparisons, and he would be promoted by someone who wanted to. Those who watch Captain America really can't say. The United States does have freedom of speech, and it's paintable. If the righteous God in their hearts is ridiculed, they will be on TV or even debate in Congress. If he started the Association of Heroes and the Steve team, the media would not pay more attention. I hope this storm will pass. Edward turned off the computer and looked at the sky without a god. It's not all comics, and even many people have only read this comic. Ryoko's death is considered to have left a lump in the hearts of fans. It turns out that the ghoul life described by Shumo is very cruel, so Edward didn't mention it. As long as he didn't mention it, it would also plant a layer of landmines for the subsequent outbreak. Edward's Twitter also drew on Shumo's intentions because of "the hell is empty and the devil is in the world." I'm curious about what the jumps that come up every week are, and they are so attractive. But more are scornful. They can only regret and sympathize with the slightest words. They are interested in painting, and they are not too lazy to click on it. Except for the elites and celebrities, most of them are young people, and Shumo is about to work on them. In the top 5 popularity, Twitter netizens have some divisions. "Boss, we have finished the animation of One Punch Man, please watch it." The leader of the anime team looked happy. "These people won't tell the comics, let's get started." Shumo answered. The animation began to play, and after hitting the Vaccine Man, the classic opening song began to sing. Marvel Public E-Punch. Participate. Sure to win. To say. What's the matter with setbacks? I'm overwhelming. One punch. That's it. Streak winning streak. Shout out loud. Always win undefeated. Crush everything. Strength. Gain strength. Until close to one's own limit. Heroes. Whether it's praising my voice or applauding me, these are all unnecessary. Hero. I don't know when I will taste the taste of failure. The face is even more, but before that, let's fight, hero. Lonely hero under the theme song of A Punch in Saitama's Ah! Get Up and the team leader manga officially begins. Very well, I am satisfied. Shumo stood up and applauded. It was almost the original anime from the previous life. The seiyuu was passionate, and the painting patted the palms of exquisite standards, and there was nowhere to choose. For this, let Uncle Andy give you more bonuses. More than a dozen people in the animation group cheered at one time, and you will make 2 separate movies and smile like a chrysanthemum. But don't be arrogant, the rest of the animation needs you to create together. Shumo looked at each other with a deep sense of time. 2 animations, the door was opened, and a dozen people came in, surprised by the animation crew. These are newly recruited personnel who are also incorporated into the animation group. At the same time, they will definitely be low. Anime, Attack on Titan, and Tokyo Ghoul. Then Shumo turned around and left. The animation group expanded and doubled and checked, and then it would appear on the TV station. Andy and will mean competition. There was only one before, but now it hurts if there is comparison, and a group of poorly produced anime products will stay in the future. Shumo chuckled. There is a strong smell of gunpowder in your room. Shumo, now the finished product is out. First put it on the network platform to be accepted. Nearly 30 people are responsible for the animation production. It can be said that they are separated from Shumo and walked side by side in the company's work area. Uncle Andy, let's solve it. After I am a practical cartoonist, Shumo disappeared in the dark clouds, leaving only the kid. Shumo walked out of the building and looked back. It seemed like a world away. Now that the company's expansion to the 40 level is critical, the release of comics is unstoppable. Shumo looked at the sky and clouds, followed the standards of the comics industry, and gradually began to build a new fusion company. Landau's heart smiled. This world only looks at fists. Everyone in the field dumbfounded. Shield. Should look like a muggle, but no one found it. Crunch. My steak, mine. As soon as Shumo entered the door, Giali grabbed the plastic bag like a wolf and put it on the table. Lona also waited for a long time and smiled. Welcome back, Shumo. Since Lorna had some overreaction the last time, the relationship between the two has become unclear. In the past, Lorna would not let Shumo buy her share, but now she doesn't refuse at all. If you buy it, I will eat it. Maybe he started to take another step in the direction of the scumbag. Humans, they will always look like they used to hate. Shu Mo touched the bridge of his nose and sat down at the dinner table. The three of them sat opposite each other, and lunch began so warmly. But how long does this atmosphere last? Jia Li wrinkled her little nose, looked at Shu Mo and asked. Shu Mo, aren't you Chinese and American? Why don't you cook? I heard that Asian men can cook. Huh. Lorna also looked at him curiously. No, you got it wrong, it's actually a woman. Shu Mo denied it with a black face, and said angrily, damn it, draw a gourmet meal in the next issue, and prescribe medicine to see if you eat it or not. After the meal, Lorna took the initiative to wash the dishes. They were not accustomed to eating these takeout meals on cartons. Shu Mo used to make them. Now that Gwen knows, it will be a little troublesome. Shu Mo stared at the back of Lorna's kitchen girl, her graceful figure, and the car headlights personally identified by transformation technique last time. For a moment. Wait. Last time, did I touch myself? Suddenly, Shu Mo walked to the balcony and found that the building might need to be enlarged a bit. Alice, what's your opinion? Sir, I think the Tony Stark villa on West Blue Shore meets your requirements. The soft voice of a child sounded, and a realistic image of a little girl in a red dress appeared beside Shu Mo. This is the artificial intelligence Skynet. After all, there is self-awareness. Even Jia Wis, who is not as good as hers, has a name, so he simply named Alice. As soon as Shu Mo came back, he inserted the U-disc into the computer port to activate Alice, and then bought a set of separate projection equipment to connect it in the morning, which was a bit worse than Tony's. There is no way, people will modify it and make it self-made. Oh, Alice is someone's house, although it has been missing now, Shu Mo said helplessly. The world I live in is my house. Alice flipped through Byakugan humanely. Then your world is over. Shu Mo turned back when he heard this and changed the subject and said, how about after seeing this world, can you produce a Terminator robot? Of course it is possible to produce TX directly in one step, but it requires a lot of materials. Materials? I have two here, look at them. Shu Mo took the Janos incinerator and the power source out of the warehouse and asked Alice to scan them. These two must be used with robots or modified humans. This seems to be part of Janos in the comics. Alice looked at him suspiciously, but didn't ask. When Alice evaluated him, Shu Mo's mouth rose slightly. Since Alice knows the comics through the internet, she must know that she actually came from Terminator, but there is no response. This is the fuzzy processing of its thinking by the system. Subconsciously neglecting, even if placed in front of him abruptly, there is no fluctuation at all. Even if someone mentions it, it doesn't matter. In summoning characters and self-aware items, the system will directly set them. 1. Whether to retain the original memory. 2. Whether there is a backdoor. 3. Whether to blur the thinking. The backdoor is the weak point. Shu Mo can directly format the summoned objects forcibly through the system. The previous experience was completely blank. In the future, the summons will be left behind. Shu Mo is not worried, but the universe ability is really weird. Like Professor X, it's like a joke in Control. After scanning, Alice said softly, plus these two can only produce one Genos. There are many materials on this planet that do not exist, and there is no way to mass produce them. The others are just TX. Shu Mo nodded, and then Gary ran in and shouted, I knew Alice was with you. Come and watch Peppa Pig with me. Peppa Pig is a cartoon specially drawn by Shu Mo for Ghana using Shadow Clone, and Cat and Mouse will be released soon. Alice didn't care when she heard it. Shu Mo ran out with Jia Li. As for, just disappear and flash past, won't it be enough? Shu Mo shook his head. Once Alice is with Jia Li, she loses the posture of destroying the world's big boos, like a little girl who loves to play. Oh, next, there is another wave of face-seeing lottery. Shu Mo looked at the sky gradually entering the dusk. Today is the number 1, and this fan value is scary for only half a week. The number of fans displayed on the system interface is over 12.3 million. Congratulations to host, Get, Doo-Doo. Shu Mo, recently I found that Peter had some problems. I just saw Peter's uniform turn black, it looks a bit. Gwen whispered. Even though Gwen didn't have much communication with Peter, she knew that Peter was Shu Mo's friend, and she hurriedly told her about some abnormalities. Well, I will go see what happened to Peter and ask you a math problem. How much is 1000 minus 7? Queens, New York. In a church, the bells of dong 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 sounded. Ah! The painful voice screamed in the bell tower. There was a figure tumbling under the big clock, making hysterical calls, as if endless pain was tormenting his spirit. Peter regrets it. He just thinks that the black spider suit is so cool. This suit can bring him great power and rapid speed, which is simply wonderful. But the side effects followed. All the anger from the past broke out, and he was extremely arrogant and became a Spider-Man in the dark. But he almost killed the thief who was only stealing things. This was not the Spider-Man he thought. Peter, who had come to the realization, quickly wanted to take off his battle uniform and solve it before the symbiote completely invaded him. Peter could feel the symbiote gradually weakening. His body was completely black and madly hitting the clock. His hands were torn apart. The symbiote was torn apart, and a black mass of matter fell below. Call. Sweating profusely and exhausted, Peter finally leaned back on the pillar in embarrassment, panting, thinking that it was finally over. He was Peter Parker, the same him. Just as Peter was happy to go home, there was a muffled sound from downstairs. Hum. Peter hurriedly got up and looked down. The virus-like black symbiote enveloped a person like flowing water. He had only time to see the person's face. It's Lightning Thompson, the star of the school football team. How did he come to the church? Peter, help me. Thompson was dumbfounded and shouted loudly. Speaking of speaking, Thompson often bullied Peter at school, but he couldn't do it when he became a little spider. This time he entered the church just to pray that he could pass the graduation exam and be admitted to a well-known rugby club. But I never expected to see Peter, and saw the dark horny lump from Peter falling on him. Hold on, Thompson. Peter hurriedly jumped from above, trying to pull the symbiote, but he could land for a moment, and he staggered because of exhaustion. And these wriggling black liquor swallowed completely in an instant like a black monster, eroding the whole body like a virus. Oh, no, Peter blamed himself. If it weren't for the innocent people he was here, how could he be possessed? And if he hadn't noticed at first, Thompson would not be like that. Oh, I met Peter again. Thompson was completely dark like a replica Spider-Man with a hoarse and sharp voice coming out. Thompson will wake up soon. Peter shouted again and again, hoping that Thompson would wake up by himself. As soon as the voice fell, the venom that Thompson had melted suddenly waved out a black whip and directly knocked Peter out, slamming it heavily on the stone wall. Ha ha ha, Peter is awesome. I am Thompson. Venom roared loudly. Thompson, who was supposed to be a bad thing, would have such a powerful power, and no one can refuse this power. This kind of power can continue to bully others. Awesome. Peter, why don't you be bullied by me honestly? Weak and incompetent, you can only live permanently under my fist. A fierce light appeared on Duel's hideous face, and he slammed a punch on Peter once again. Boom. The heavy blow caused cracks in the stone wall, and the bloody Peter was unable to slide down the wall, coughing up blood. Thompson, listen to me, it will only hurt you. Peter's silky bloodline overflowed from the corner of his mouth. The spider silk catapult was still in the red suit, and the body was exhausted. Was beaten twice and now has absolutely no backhand strength. Hurt me. You are jealous of my power. Hearing the words of the poison knight, he suddenly jumped into thunder, and the black shell of the whole body was solidified, gradually becoming larger, and his sturdy body was like a hill. Let's talk if you can survive. Spider-Man, Peter Parker. The whole body leaned forward violently, and his hands raised his casserole big fists and slammed on Peter like a violent storm. Bang bang bang. At first, Peter still had the strength to protect his head, but he fell weakly after a few punches. He only felt that there was no pain in his whole body, and he could hear the sound of cracking bones in his ears. Poison Yoruichi grabbed the bloody Peter's neck and lifted it up in the air. With the other hand, he continued to hit this good New York neighbor with his fists. Goodbye, Peter. Dai threw it upward, and with gravity pulling, his fists suddenly blasted out, his mouth opened wider and wider, sharp teeth popped out, and his long tongue stuck out with mucus. The purple line and black shadow flashed past. Ohm. The double punches caused a small popping sound, and Dai immediately looked back. Da-da-da. The sound of footsteps followed, and the Sombra embracing Peter out of the shadows, under the refraction of the moonlight. A teenager with pale hair, a striped short-sleeved jacket and black short pants. What horrified Dai was the four tail-like, sharp crimson alien limbs on both sides of the waist. He asked blankly. How much is 1000 minus 7? 1000 minus 7. What are you, kid? Dai's long tongue rolled in the air, and Madara's white teeth were sharpened between the mouth of the blood basin. He clearly saw four strange whips growing on both sides of the white-haired boy's waist. For the time being, think so. Obviously this boy is not a human, but a mutant? Body upgraded? Forget it. As long as you stop him on the path of murder, you will die. The white-haired boy slowly put the blood-filled Peter against the wall and put him away, and when he was about to get up, he was grabbed by the corner of his trousers. Run away, run away. With fresh water in his mouth, Peter weakly persuaded him that he couldn't watch the boy in front of him go to death. The power of Poison Yi is stronger than that of possessing him, and it is unceremonious to say that even if he put on a red uniform, Peter will soon fall into a disadvantage. Peter didn't know where the boy emerged from, but it seemed that he was weak in writing. Even if he stretched out 4 whips behind him, he didn't feel much fighting. And this pale face looked a bit unspeakable. Have seen? Impossible. And this whip seems to have been seen somewhere. Peter was hit continuously, and now his mind is a little confused and his vision is a bit blurred. A little bit of blood was covered in it, and it kept slipping from his face. At this time, Jin Muyan has already put on a mask in Duel in the comics, but the appearance have changed greatly. You can't see it from your face alone. It would be obvious if there was a mask, but Jin Muyan didn't wear it now. In addition, the manga is flat and black and white. If it is 2D anime, Peter can guess it even if it is messy. Peter felt a little plausible by virtue of his super strength, and he was confused. Jin Muyan turned sideways and glanced at Yu Guang indifferently. It's okay, I won't lose. Peter, wait for me to kill him first, and then I will clean up you. The poisonous knight rolled into the tongue, and the deep grinning with his teeth and claws, the powerful force made him confident to reach an unprecedented height. Die. The poisonous knight's feet slammed on the surface and turned into a jet black bullet and burst out, leaving only cobweb-like cracks and slightly sunken pits in place. Keep talking. Jin Muyan said that he was calm, his left eye socket suddenly became pitch black, and the pupil flashed, turning black and red bottom like a black sun engulfing the world, revealing endless darkness, and some red threads extended from the eye socket. You are just a weak one. As soon as the voice fell, Jin Muyan put his hands on the front frame, and the fists of Dai, as if they were discussing, fell on the crossed arms, making a dull clashing sound. At the same time, the scaly tentacles of the 4 Kazuko behind him suddenly thrust up. As if 4 crimson beams of light pierced through the dark night, they went straight to the door of the poisonous knight quickly, accurately, and fiercely. Puff. The 4 Hezi pierced through the dark arms of the knight, splashing black filaments on the ground, and hitting the throat like a broken bamboo. With a little buffer, the poisonous knight's head flashed like a lightning, and he brushed it together, and another black liquid substance was pierced and spilled. Get in the way. At this time, Jin Muyan was in the period when he joined the bronze tree after being tortured by the gecko. He accepted the fact that he was a ghoul and became extremely strong. Abandoning the weakness he once had, he became furious and aggressive when fighting, thinking that the strong was himself. For those who maliciously hinder themselves, they will erase them without hesitation. Jin Muyan's expressionless face changed, and the fierce god and evil Break stared at the poison knight, stepped forward, Kazuko threw it out, and at the same time, his thick hands were firmly locked in his hands. Boom. The 4 red pillars directly hit the side of the forehead of the poison knight, and a muffled thunderous sound exploded, and a transparent air ring emerged. At the same time, both feet jumped up in the air and kicked hard on their abdomen, causing them to fly upside down like an offline kite. However, the combo is not over yet. I saw the wind blowing under Jin Muyan's feet, repeatedly stepping out, turning around without catching up, and the heavy rock brought by Linhe generally smashed on the poison knight. Bang. The strong poisonous knight slammed into the wall fiercely, a deafening sound rang, and the rubble rolled down like a shower and directly buried the hill. Awesome, so strong. The little spider Peter was stunned, and looked dumbfounded at this scene, completely different from what he thought in his head. However, Peter's mind became clearer and calmer, and the heavy damage he suffered was slowly healing his wounds with his strong resilience. The blood no longer overflowed and began to solidify, and the line of sight became clearer, looking deeply at Jin Muyan's back and Kazuko dancing in the air. I've seen it, yes, I have seen it. Peter frowned, and memories kept popping up in his mind. Even though his face looked different, he was really familiar with this way of fighting. Whip? No, it should be a long one. Kyoko? Kazuko? Ghoul. With a buzz in his head, Peter became even more bewildered, and murmured softly. Isn't this a manga? I read it wrong? But this seems to be a ghoul? Shu Mo, faker. What kind of comics do you draw even people run out? Thinking of the end, Peter's face exploded like a ghost, staring at the back of the white-haired boy. No matter how dazed Peter was, the battle continued. Jin Muyan slowly stepped forward towards the pile of rocks, and said indifferently, What's the matter? Nothing. Wow. Jihahaha. The gravel pile was pushed away by the poison knight, and the dark body was raised again. The water-like appearance began to form muscles and look scary. The tongue was spit out, and the blood bowl opened, and he shouted. Boy, you angered me, your attacks are useless. Only then did Jin Muyan discover that the pierced hole in Dai's hands had long been closed, and the growth of the black matter closed again, and the moonlight's refraction had not changed at all. Regeneration. Ha ha ha, come on. The poisonous knight roared to the sky, his white eyes became narrower and narrower, and his snarled grin was cut to half of his head, and the upward arc was even more frightening. With lightning-like left and right bows, two black spider silks that were harder and more flexible than white were shot into the wall, then they stuck to the two steel bars and pulled out, and threw them like a javelin. Woo! The powerful force carries the steel bars and makes a sharp whistling sound, piercing the air, like the black light passing by on a moonlit night. Cannot be hardwired. This was the thought in Jin Muyan's mind. Lin He was not Jia He, who had extremely high defensive capabilities, and the 4He smashed the ground heavily. With a bang, the surface slightly collapsed and cracked, and then with the force of the counter-shock, Jin Muyan pressed down slightly, kicking his feet on the ground, and bounced high like a cannonball. As soon as the figure left the ground, the sharp steel bars pierced the concrete floor like black thorns, and only halfway through it could it stop. Call out. Blindly defensive will undoubtedly lose. Jin Muyan jumped up like a cannonball and rushed forward in the air. In the blink of an eye, he came to die, and the 4 Kazutsu turned into beams of light and protruded a little red light. However, Du Yi had been prepared long ago, and roared deeply. I caught you. I saw the black material in one hand turned into a pitch-black shield like a stream of water, and the other hand suddenly grabbed it like a claw. Hey! The sharp Kazuko did not pierce as before, but slammed on the shield and made a harsh metal rubbing sound. At this time, the claws reached out like lightning and wanted to pull Kazuko directly. As long as he grasps these 4 annoying tentacles, Du Yi has the confidence to be able to directly tear it apart with his strength, and the final victory is already divided. Vision. Diaresis. Jin Muyan is a semi-ghoul. Once he accepts the ghoul status, his power speed will increase greatly. After the two geckos are eaten together, in addition to the stronger Hezi, they also have physical stamina. In a trance, Jin Muyan did not change his face, did not finish, but leaned up all by himself, with one foot just on his sturdy arm, and suddenly turned forward like a diver and rolled 360 degrees. Bang! When the sensitive Jin Muyan turned over the top of Du Yi's head, his slender feet were directly kicked back and kicked in his head. The back of the assaulted head was severely hit, and Du Yi staggered forward and fell to the ground. Jin Muyan landed and glided for a certain distance from the air. Xingyue, who had not succeeded in dismantling the move, had a solemn face and a dull pain in her feet. This feeling is completely different from when we met before. Jin Mu knew that the monster in front of him was getting stronger. Dai's defensive ability rose straight, and he easily got up, shaking his neck, and grinning grinningly. It hurts, but it still doesn't work. You will die if you go on like this, kid. It is a thoughtful symbiosis of extraterrestrial organic life, appearing almost in liquid form. It needs to be combined with a host to survive, and can give the host powerful strength and abilities. Poison Yi doesn't have any extraordinary powers, fire breathing, ice spitting, thundering, etc., but it has superpower, astonishing speed, terrible patience, and because he is fluid, his hands can turn into a variety of cold weapons. I once possessed Spider-Man, so I also have the ability of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man can't beat him in a reasonable way. Huh, isn't it? As soon as the voice fell, Jin Muyan sprang out like a sharp arrow, but instead of rushing straight up, he rushed to the wall. When Dai saw this, he thought that Jin Muyan left the little spider and escaped through the window. How could he not chase after he was beaten? The black substance ran up like sticking to the wall, and yelled angrily, "Little devil, don't want to escape." Jin Muyan's speed became slower and slower. Hearing the sound of pedaling behind him, he suddenly twisted and jumped down. The 4 Linheis gathered and hid. Jin Muyan seemed to commit suicide by jumping off the building. From Dai's point of view, he was waiting for death. He laughed wildly and greeted him with a heavy fist. Just in the middle of the church, large and small figures began to collide together. Just as time is temporary, when Jin Muyan touched his body with his dark fist, one Linhei suddenly slapped against the wall, and the whole person panned abruptly, and the 3 Linhei began to change and bind into a cone-shaped spur. Dai's grin directly solidified, only to feel that his eyes were empty, but Jin Muyan flashed sideways to the side of his fist. Red light suddenly appeared. Pouch. The huge Hezi pierced through the body of the Poison Knight, firmly nailed to the wall, but it was not over yet. Since Jin Muyan knew that Du Yi had a strong regeneration ability, of course, he took advantage of the victory to pursue the attack, and another Kazuko directly swung it out. He didn't attack his arm, but used a trick to stab the poisonous knight, first of all, his narrow eyes. Laugh. The Poison Knight that was caught off guard had no time to react, and Kazuko pierced his eyes and burst out red blood and black substances. It is true that his fast running speed does not mean that his reaction speed is fast. It took less than 3 seconds from when the two of them were about to collide to when they were stabbed in their eyes. Coupled with Dai's reckless character, his overconfidence instilled all his strength into his hands, and Jin Muyan caught a flaw in his hands and launched an attack without any defense. You lose. Jin Muyan was hovering in the air because Hezi nailed the wall, and the scale he had pierced his eyes suddenly pulled out, splashing scarlet blood again. Just as Jin Muyan pierced the other eye again, a sharp neigh blew through the church like a crazy beast roar. A surging airwave suddenly burst from the mouth of the poison knight. Cici lifted the cone-shaped Hezi, and slammed his fists against the wall, and the cracked wall collapsed. Upon seeing this, Jin Muyan hurriedly shrank Hezi and threw himself aside, and at this moment, the poisonous knight violently bitten forward. A splash of blood flew in the air. Humph. Jin Muyan lowered his head and saw a huge wound on his arm as if it had been bitten by beast, rolling in the air and landing on the stairs. Although it looked scary with blood spurting from his arm, he had a strong recovery ability, and he soon slowly healed and began to grow and converge. Roar. I'm Poison Knight. Yu Muyan's pupils shrank to a point abruptly, and his face was green as he looked at the pitch-black monster in front of him like a mountain. I am Poisonous Knight. With the roar of the violent behemoth, the airwave rolled in all directions, dust rose in all directions, and a behemoth came to the ground. The burly body like a giant mountain, the pitch black revealing the horror of the abyss, the black fluid like silk thread extending from the body and flying in the air, the long curled tongue covered with disgusting night body is even more chilling. The flesh of the whole body swelled like a small hill again, and it looked like it was made of rock from a distance. The hands made Jin Muyan's face even more blue, and his huge palm was exactly the length of his entire person, which means that Jin Muyan could be firmly pinched in the palm of his hand with a grasp. In this way, the victory and defeat can be distinguished by strong physical strength. The long and narrow leucorrhea eyes that had been poked a hole before are now intact, even extending back to form a leucorrhea. The rows of fangs are even more exaggerated and scary. The rows of white teeth coupled with the big mouths of the giant beasts let Jin Muyan know deeply. As long as one bite, it is not a problem with the arm, at least half of the body will be torn. Boy, I want to thank you, it is because of your power that makes Thompson feel terrified, and I will completely control it. Dai's voice began to deteriorate, and the tone that was considered human before was now dull and low, and his hands directly touched the edge of the church bell tower as soon as he stretched his hands. The body type is too big. Jin Muyan has no idea why this monster has grown like this. In fact, Dai had already given the reason. The intense panic caused Dai's smooth invasion. The two combined with each other, turning this body into its puppet. At the same time, even though the two are in a symbiotic relationship, Dai must show his whole cards in the face of Jin Muyan's combos. That is to draw the vitality of the host back to feed the symbiote for rapid growth, to reach this body. In fact, Thompson, who is less than 20 years old in his body, is now in his 30s. Jin Muyan. At this time, even though Peter had not healed from his injuries, he was already capable of fighting. When he saw that Poison Knight had become so huge, he rushed over and asked tentatively. Let me help you. Don't come here, you don't even have a battle uniform. Jin Muyan refused, staring at Dai. Poison Yoruichi was attached to the red envelope battle uniform at first. As Peter tore his clothes directly, the battle uniform disappeared, and the spider silk catapult inside was destroyed directly. The Spider-Man's combat power without spider silk is greatly reduced. Just as Peter was distressed that he was useless, Dai grinned and said, Peter, you are trash if you abandon me. Then suddenly a voice interjected in, appearing extremely lightly. Abandoned. I also abandoned. Why don't you come back to find Mom, baby? Who is it? Toxin Yoruichi listened, felt the great humiliation, turned his head and smelled the prestige to shout. I saw a grotesque man wrapped tightly all over, wearing a red and black tights, sitting on the top stairs, with his feet dangling in the air, appearing to be leisurely and contented. 2 samurai swords were pinned behind him, and pistols were hung on the legs on both sides. Some bulging things were hidden inside and not exposed. Spider-Man? No. Who are you? There is no room for Dou Yi to doubt, because this suit is really like Spider-Man. Red, black and red blue are particularly easy to confuse at first glance. Me? Just a mercenary asking for money. Hey, the fat little spider would hire me to chop off this big guy. The weird twisted and twisted to his feet, and the weird tone made people a little nervous. The weird twisted and twisted to his feet, and the weird tone made people a little nervous. When Peter heard it, the breeze blew for a while, and his feet could not help but shudder. When he lowered his head, he realized that he had torn his battle uniform and he was fattening his body. Otherwise, it is really a pervert running under the night. In fact, it looks like a pervert now. Peter bit the bullet and replied, how much? Secretly said, the situation is a bit bad now. Jin Muyan doesn't seem to be stronger than the comics, but it's a bit difficult to get such a big monster, and he doesn't have the tools to fight, so a helper just happened to come. Although it doesn't look good, it's better than nothing. The weirdo was overjoyed when he heard the words, and drew out 2 samurai swords and shouted, "For the sake of your and my couple's pretense, the strongest mercenary in the universe, Deadpool, only takes you 1 million. I'll start hacking." While walking on the top floor, Huo Huoxin thought about where to go. At this time, Dai quit, and I am standing here on such a big mountain. Do you think you should cut it and cut it? Does it put me in your eyes? Go to hell. The poisonous knight violently thundered and swung out his paws. For a time, the wind was so loud that the air was cut through the buzzing, but a black paw patted it in the blink of an eye. Rumble. The huge claws smashed into the Deadpool's position, and the powerful destructive force penetrated the church bell tower. The rubble rolled down, and the smoke rose upstairs. Jin Muyan and Peter dodged again and again, but Dai felt that the anger was still there, and he kept pulling to the side. The building was torn open, and the light slowly came in. In the smoke and dust, Du Yi retracted his paw contentedly, and said with a frantic grin, "What shit mercenary has turned into a pile of mud?" Seeing this scene, Jin Muyan and Peter were a little surprised. It really ended like this? Speak better than done? Peter was a little disappointed, thinking that he was a helper to be funny. Wow, how heavy are you? Your paws stabbed my Xiaoju through. If my Vanessa knows, she definitely doesn't want to have sex with me. Deadpool climbed up from the edge of the ruins, and in the shocking eyes of everyone, his whole body was squashed by a heavy object and then began to expand to his original posture. The broken twisted bones began to grow and heal at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the splashing voice of Deadpool kept muttering. At the same time, it turned from slow to fast and turned into a red figure, and the 2 samurai swords exuded a cold light, and suddenly jumped down. Baby, Mama Deadpool is going to stuff your paws under yourself. While fighting, he did not forget to speak with nerve-like language. 2 silver lights flashed in the night, like sudden passing lights. The air was rippling at an extremely fast speed, making a buzzing sound directly across Dai's neck. Pouch. The black matter suddenly spewed out like spring water, and it cut to 3 points into the wood, and the poison knight covered the wound in amazement. It seems that there is no need for 1 million. Peter was overjoyed when he saw this, and there was still time to entangle 1 million. Jin Muyan's face was solemn, without letting go of a single detail. It's useless, it has a powerful regeneration ability. 10 minutes ago Shu Mo put down the phone, raised his brows and looked at the system dial. Congratulations to the host. Get Jinmu Research Fragment X2, Body Replacement Technique, Illusion, Hypnosis, Inoue Orihime Fragment X2, Telescope Technique. This is the 1 million lottery before Gwen called. It is less than before but more beautiful. Skill fragments have been replaced by the full version of skills and the time to collect fragments has been eliminated. Synthesizable characters detected. Jinmuken is in the process of synthesizing. 8 pieces of puzzle pieces flew out of the warehouse and collided with the 2 white pieces, quickly forming a character poster. The above pattern made Shu Mo stunned. What appeared in his sight were constantly flickering characters. All of them were Jin Muyan, with student appearances, preliminary ghoul, half-herald, and even a huge monster, dragon, etc. At last it stopped, and the system prompt sounded, character completed randomly, and a card emitting white light floated to Shu Mo's hand. Jin Muyan, Bronze Tree Period, 4 Kago, can burst out the unconscious, centipede, Kazuko is temporarily half-hero, through the Hebao eating or character fragments to evolve to the next period. Each manga owner Kakuzu changes from weak to strong, and of course his strength is different in different periods. Shu Mo clicks on the period column. The power of the next period is shown as a centipede, scale Hyuk. Shu Mo considered that Peter seemed to be in trouble now, and just let Jin Muyan use his skills to see if he could adapt to Marvel Universe. Whether to keep the memory. Yes. Shu Mo's decisive Kaido, how could Jin Muyan grow up without previous experience? Even though this memory is painful, it also caused the appearance of Jin Mu Shao Angel. The card disappeared in the dazzling light, replaced by a white-haired boy, scanning the surroundings. Shu Mo. Jin Muyan said hello to his heart. This is the system's summons trust in Shu Mo from the very beginning, and it is completely flesh and blood. This is in line with Shu Mo's idea. If the people summoned are all cold, isn't it a robot? It's not interesting at all. Jinmu, do me a favor. Shu Mo didn't use the tone of command, but talked with each other respectfully. After learning about Peter's information and knowing the location of the probe through Skynet's intrusion, Jin Mu jumped out the window and ran out without shirk. It seems we are going to move house, so we need a big villa to buy a special summoner to live in. Shu Mo touched his chin and looked at the fragments of characters in the warehouse. Many of them could be summoned, just a few. Obviously, it is impossible to live in the current house, especially the habitual 3 of Lorna and Giali will repel outsiders, and Shu Mo does not want to live together. In case of calling a fool, Shu Mo will give him up if he doesn't say anything at the beginning. So I live in a separate building, and the summons are separated. Anyway, I have money to buy it. Alice, can you monitor the situation at the scene? Shu Mo called Skynet Alice. No, they shouldn't have a probe in that place in the church, not to mention that satellite observations are not possible indoors. Alice went to see that Peppa Pig did not appear, but the voice came from the computer. Hey, I still have the telescope technique, a peeping artifact. Shu Mo glanced at a skill before remembering it, and took out a crystal ball from the warehouse. On the crystal ball placed on the table, Shu Mo moved his mind and traced and restored it based on the breath of gold and wood. Everything in the church was shown on the glass. In this case, I can enlarge it and project it. Alice flashed out suddenly, scanning with interest. Can you do it? Shu Mo suspiciously. Telescope technique doesn't match science at all. After all, it will eventually form light and shadow, just use it. Sure enough, under Alice's debugging, a realistic 3D projection appeared above the crystal ball, occupying a screen, which was completely enlarged, and the look inside was extremely similar. Live action version. Shu Mo sat in a chair and watched the movie leisurely. In his opinion, Jin Mu would not lose to Dai. The poisonous knight in the movie is really not much better. Shu Mo continued to draw the lottery while watching the projection. Now the wealth is rich, there are more than 11.3 million, and 2 million will come directly. Congratulations to the host, for acquiring the Ashura mode, Rukia skills, Shunpo, apology bug, sealed left arm. The apology bug, a very small, solid black technology like a cricket, as long as it is touched by it, it will reflect on the bad things that it has done and apologize. Shu Mo looked at a card, the left wrist of the seal, its function, collect all 5 parts to summon Exordia. Hey, the monster card that represents the invincible victory as soon as it appeared on the stage, will it be a god in this Marvel universe? Shu Mo took a deep breath, and at the same time thought of the strongest creation god of light among Yu-Gi-Oh! He understood that it was marked, God. How does it compare with Marvel's God? Being abused and beaten? After all, the universe is too deep. Just let's have a 5 million lottery draw. Shu Mo decisively said that 9.3 million points are only 4.3 million points in an instant. He has no plans to save a little. When the system will be upgraded in the future, there may be a mall that will not be enough. Congratulations to host, for getting the blue-eyed white dragon, Uzumaki Naruto Shard X1, Doraemon Shard X1, Mikasa Shard X2, Terminator T800, Rukia Kuchiki's full set of Keto skills, sealed left foot, Haruno Sakura's hairpin, and intimacy heaven. Shu Mo's face suddenly stagnated, and the most valuable person in it was the blue-eyed white dragon. Yu Guang glanced at the immersive projection and frowned, but found that the situation on the scene was not good. When he focused on the lottery draw, the Knight of Poison suddenly became bigger. This is not how it was performed in the movie. Shu Mo hurriedly got up and realized that he had made a mistake. The Marvel movie may be in line with the plot, but the strength may behave like a comic. Even with this Deadpool, it is not optimistic. Shu Mo sorted out all the awards, drew out a card, walked to the balcony, and then threw it fiercely. The card spun quickly, and a huge body appeared in the dazzling white light. Aerospace carrier, alert. Alarm. There is a huge thermal response over Manhattan. At this time, the alarm sounded suddenly, and the agents acted immediately and touched the screen to control them. Quickly put the target on the big screen. How big is it? Nick Fury put his hands on the podium and quickly ordered. Director, the target speed is too fast to capture the appearance, only a vague shadow, and hundreds of meters of body-length data. Commander Hill quickly reported the situation. There are thick dark clouds in the ultra-clear picture. Even if the moonlight is combined with the detection of low Earth orbit satellites, only extremely huge shadows can be seen. Calculate the target's destination immediately, and shield. Must arrive in time. Nick Fury shouted eagerly, what the hell is this? Is it another alien creature? Nick Fury thinks that his face is white, but there is no reason for it. Roar. Like the roar of an ancient behemoth, the rising waves of air shattered the church glass, and the smashed fragments poured down like a shower, and fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Wow, baby, how come you can regenerate like your mother? You deserve to be a son. The dead servant who had cut twice fell on the ground, and saw that the poisonous knight's neck began to recover, and he began to release painful mouths. Dai has never been humiliated like this before, and Deadpool's yellow storm poison cannon is simply a weapon to injure the enemy 1,000. Damn it. Damn it. I'm going to tear your mouth apart, and die for me. The angry poisonous knight swung his hands like a black whip, and the huge black thorns poured down like a majestic mountain. Rumble. With a loud and deafening noise, A big hole was smashed into the surface of the church, and cobweb-like cracks spread out everywhere. Deadpool lay on the ground in embarrassment, and the blood converged into a creek, only feeling that the bones were all broken, the skin was open and fleshy, and his whole body couldn't move. Dead. Why don't you keep talking? What mercenary, scoff. Dai sneered, because the dominant body didn't use Thompson's brain to think about problems, and his intelligence plummeted. After all, it was really a single-celled organism. Even if you have known many civilizations, your knowledge will increase but your IQ will not increase. Jin Muyan's face changed, and he secretly said, "Opportunity." The whole person dragged the long red tail to turn into a meteor, and all the speed and power exploded. Bang. Before Dai finished speaking, a red light flashed, and a violent pain stretched from the abdomen to the neck, and the black substance poured out like a wild ocean. The black fluid was spilled on the floor, and it squirmed from time to time after falling. "Hey, I'll send it too." Deadpool had already got up and rushed up alive. The light of the knife pierced through the night. The air was stirred, and he swung a long knife at the ankle of the knight. The blade of the high-speed slash carried air pressure into it, and the incomparably hard black shell was cut into the Hado road, and even sparks were splashed. On the other side, Jin Muyan was completely changed. The red eyes of his right eye exuded evil light, and two causes appeared behind him, and the 6 scales were dark red. At this time, it was wrapped into a hammer and pierced deeply into the body of Toxic Knight. The whole person's hideous face turned into an unconscious violent state, rushing from the abdomen to the neck like an alien climbing, and the cracks behind him all the way up. From a distance, it looked as if Poison Yi had been dissected, and a huge, narrow opening was actually cut. The paddling Peter was stunned, his eyes were about to fly out of his sockets. How could this Jin Muyan be so different from the weak look in his mind? He even felt that this was not Jin Muyan, not the number. Du Yi was furious with anger when faced with the attack of the two, his tongue ejected and flogged at Jin Muyan, and at the same time, his feet suddenly stretched out with black tentacles towards the Deadpool bag. Jin Mu jumped up, and the 6 linheis were scattered and spun out at the same time. The pink tongue and the dark red linhei collided in the air. Boom. In the next instant, a thin ring of air exploded at the point of collision. After a stalemate, Jin Muyan flew upside down like a kite that lost the line. In the blink of an eye, the body of the poisonous knight flew out and slammed through the church wall. The streets outside. Golden Wood. Peter could only sigh that the situation was changing rapidly, and the golden wood that had just torn open his mouth was bounced off, and he seemed to be of no use here and ran out hastily. As for the mercenaries who asked for money just now, it seems that they are dead. Hey, fake, leave me here alone, and I was tied up by the monster playing. Deadpool is now tightly wrapped in layers of black thread tentacles, lifted up in the air, struggling to shout. Little spider, you deserter, I must take you 1 million. Baby. Discuss something as long as you don't burst below me, whatever else you want. While speaking, Deadpool's legs clenched, and the head wrapped in the red headgear was slightly shy to one side. As if to say again, come and be happy, I'm here. Damn it. The magma in the heart that Dai was hit by the poisonous tongue of the dead servant's mouth suddenly erupted, and he held onto the dead servant tightly in a rage. Click. The bones creaked and all cracked, and Deadpool was firmly grasped by the huge hand, and the unparalleled power spread throughout Deadpool's body. Dead. Dai. Ah. Du Yi clenched his fists tightly, and the dead waiter wailed tragically in it, which sounded a little weird. He could feel that the mercenary in his hand had indeed become a puddle of mud and then opened. That's right, it's totally unrecognizable, and there is no human form at all. Taking into account the powerful regenerative ability, Dai squeezed it again, thinking it was not enough to twist his hands tightly. Finally dead. Dai shook the mud in his hand without a scream, and slammed it down hard, smashing a hole with a bang, feeling a little angry. He slammed in, and then studied and polished it. After doing the above actions, Dai calmed down and exhaled for a long time. No one can not be angry under the poison cannon of Deadpool, especially for the self-proclaimed #1 person in the world like Dai. In the streets not far away, Peter was looking for an inverted flight, and he saw Jin Muyan lying on the ground covered in blood. Jin Mu, are you okay? Peter passed a cold coat wrapped around him along the way, and helped Jin Mu up. Call. Jin Mu suddenly raised his head, his eyes glowing fiercely, his face paler, and he looked at Peter deeply, panting. Peter felt a little uncomfortable by this stare, his expression seemed abnormal, and he smiled timidly. Jinmu, are you okay? The current Jin Muyan walked out of the 6-rooted centipede state due to force and violence. He was unconscious and in a state of unconscious instinct. Despair. The slender hand grabbed Peter's shoulder, and the fierce golden wood made Peter feel his throat. You should know that he doesn't even have spider silk, and Jin Muyan wants to eat his flesh. Does it require Shu Mo to pay compensation after death? Peter really wants to cry for what's the matter. At this moment, a huge shadow passed by, and 3 beans fell from the sky with a click. To Peter's surprise, the beans didn't bounce, and they actually lay on the ground. There was also a slight shake. Jin Muyan wrinkled his nose, as if smelling some delicious food, grabbed 3 beans and swallowed it directly, his face flushed as if he was eating a big pill. Peter is a little confused. Isn't he cannibalism? Why do beans smell so good? Before Jin Muyan's body changed, the sound of buzzing, airflow was blasted in the distance, and when Peter looked up, cold sweat suddenly broke out from his back. The spider felt its hair exploded. Hold head high. The dragon sounded like thunder, and the stone broke the sky. Aerospace carrier, Natasha, have you kept up? Nick Fury stood on the console, looked at the high-definition screen, and asked Natasha among the Coon fighters thousands of miles away. Dark clouds billowed in the night sky, and a Coon fighter was flying fast in it, and a huge black shadow was directly in front of him. Natasha chased Kaido. We are chasing, but the opponent's speed is so fast, we were hung far behind. Hawkeye was sitting on the copilot and using the equipment to look from a distance, and said in amazement, according to the results of the instrument scanning, this behemoth has a very high energy response inside. Wait, there seems to be a huge black monster inside a collapsed building in the distance. The target dropped, and he swooped toward the black monster. Listening to Hawkeye's series of reports, Nick Fury stared at the ultra-clear screen. Rumble. Hold head high. The dragon roars like thunder, and the clouds roar for 9 days. The Venom had just stepped on Deadpool, and the spider on his body suddenly felt vigilant, and the high-altitude clouds and mist not far away rolled. The sonic boom suddenly sounded, and he quickly looked back. I saw a silver-white monster swooping down. At this moment, the silver-white monster roared in the sky, and the airflow rolled by the sound waves was surging, and the whole ground was shrouded in shadow. The gusty wind roared, and a wonderful light curtain appeared under the moonlight slowly mirroring. An extremely huge momentum poured down, and the air became heavy at this moment. The sound of the huge destruction caused by the Venom caused many people running out of the streets to sweat their backs, their limbs cold, and their bodies shivering. An unspeakable sense of fear arises spontaneously. This is the difference between races and the surrender of lower creatures to higher creatures. Dai was unwilling to show weakness and roared with his blood in his mouth. Roar. The silver-white monster was not afraid, still leaning over and rushing down. Dai slammed his fists hard when he saw it. Bang. In the next moment, the silver-white monster's head collided with the pitch-black fists, and a sudden burst of violent power swept away in all directions, crushing the ground with a madness, and rubbing out a cobweb-like crack. However, Dai discovered at this time that the silver-white monster was even bigger than it, and a powerful force invaded into the body along its arms. The poisonous knight flew upside down like a cannonball and blasted into the ground heavily. In the shock of everyone, the silver-white monster gathered its wings to cover the sky and fell on the ground, causing a gust of wind and smoke. Chief, did you see it? Natasha controlled the Coon-type fighter plane to hover in the distance. Nick Fury responded softly on the air carrier. His face was very ugly. He didn't even know where these 2 monsters came from. Is it an alien or an Earth native? Dai turned over and pulled out his head, and said angrily, who is it again? The blue-eyed white dragon did not respond, but instead made a deafening roar of the dragon's roar. Everyone on the ground covered their ears with a powerful sound, as if they were facing each other into an ice cellar. Venom seemed to see the disdain of the Qingyan Bailong towards it, and turned into a black meteor in a blink of an eye, and came to the Qingyan Bailong in a blink of an eye. His hands instantly turned into warhammers, slammed down, and the squeezed air buzzed. Seeing this, the blue-eyed white dragon just waved his paw and slapped forward randomly. With a bang, in the sight of Peter Parker and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Poison Yi was shot and flew out. The movements of the blue-eyed white dragon seemed very random, as if the opponent was too weak. When Peter turned his head to say something, only then did he realize that Jin Mu had a different aura and looked even stronger. Jin Mu looked at the lingering Coon-style fighter from a distance, then backed up a few steps, hiding in the dark. Venom slowly got up and stared at the blue-eyed white dragon, knowing that the gap between the 2 sides was beginning to retreat, but the young white dragon seemed to guess his thoughts and took a step forward, and the knight took a step back. The eyes of the blue-eyed Bailong showed contemptuous eyes, and suddenly the whole body violently turned into a silver-white light from static to moving. It just rushed to the Venom in an instant and raised sharp claws exuding deep cold. This scene is exactly the same as the previous poisonous knight's attack, but the result is bound to be different. Bang. A whine resounding between the world and the earth, the only huge body was turned into another block by spinning like a top. What the hell is this? It looks a bit like a dragon, Peter murmured softly. This is also the idea of Nick Fury. The Venom began to fear. He could not see the slightest possibility of winning in the young white dragon. Black matter began to flow all over his body, and the tentacles of black threads stretched out and converged into 2 wings. Spreading his wings and glaring at the ground, he set off a gust of wind and rushed into the sky. The blue-eyed white dragon did not chase, just when the others were a little confused. The eyes of the blue-eyed white dragon shone with blue light, lifting the dragon head, facing the Venom that was gradually flying away, spreading row upon row of teeth. A wave of dazzling white energy gathered. Explosive blast bomb. A white-blue beam of light burst out like a bridge between heaven and earth, and it quickly caught up with the distant poisonous night. Danger. Extremely dangerous. The spider on Venom's body kept sending out signals. Hearing the sound of breaking clouds behind him, he couldn't help turning his head. His pupils suddenly shrank to a point, and a vast expanse of whiteness rushed into its sight. Boom! The thunder-like sound of Pindi runs through the entire world, and Poison Yi is buried under the explosion of the wind bomb, and there is no possibility of regeneration. The sky soared into the sky, and the white-blue rays of light attacked the entire cloud layer, just like the sun. The dazzling circular shock wave exploded fiercely, and the clouds dispersed, looking from a distance as if the sky was blown into a hollow. Immediately afterwards, the overwhelming airwave hit the surface, and the wind screamed. Fortunately, the explosion point was located high in the sky, and the citizens on the surface were not affected too much. Then the blue-eyed white dragon spread out its wings to cover the sky and rushed to the sky. When Natasha controlled the Kun-type fighter to catch up to the clouds, she found that the target suddenly disappeared. Hawkeye exclaimed. How could it be possible that such a large body has no trace under the surveillance of satellites? On the aerospace carrier, Collison frowned tightly, thinking about the appearance and posture of the blue-eyed white dragon in his mind. I always feel like I've seen it before, but I can't say it. Do dragons all look like this? Collison was a little puzzled, and suddenly a picture flashed, making his face pale. Jin Mu, eh? Where did Jin Mu go? I haven't asked him whether it is Jin Mu Yan in the comics. Peter said to the side. Only then did he realize that the golden wood had disappeared, a little annoyed. After thinking about it, why not just ask Shu Mo? Church ruins shield. Agents pulled up the blockade to prevent people from entering. Natasha and others patrolled inside. The staff was busy collecting useful information. Some black blocks were stored in a sealed bag and taken back for inspection. Sir, we found the living body and an agent stepped forward to report. Natasha led people to walk over quickly, her face stagnated. Wow, I saw a pretty girl as soon as I came out. Deadpool was twisting and twisting naked, his mouth was still full of gunfire, and what made Natasha disgusting was that his face was still so terrifying. Dye couldn't kill him, it just made him recover more slowly. It happened to be the person who discovered the silk-like clothes during the blockade of S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha was frosty and let Deadpool be tied up and taken away. Although she didn't know how she was here, she was also an eyewitness to the dark monster. Shu Mo stood on the balcony and looked towards the endless night. The white hole in the night sky still flickered faintly. Call out. There was a sound of breaking through the air in midair and white light flew at extremely fast. Shu Mo quickly pinched 2 fingers in his hand. It's a card, blue-eyed white dragon. Shu Mo didn't wait long before Jin Muyan jumped up to him in the distance. Thanks, Jinmu. Shu Mo stepped forward, patted his shoulder, a little depressed, and said, I didn't expect Dai to be so powerful. I'm so sorry, I asked him to send Hebao. Well, I'm going to eat, now I need a little quiet environment. Jin Muzi didn't mind, the feeling of discomfort behind him made his face flushed. Okay, there is. Shu Mo, let me go into the warehouse. It's quiet enough. Jin Mu interrupted directly, and a crimson Kazuko suddenly spread behind him and began to swell. It is good. As soon as Shu Mo waved his hand, Jin Muyan disappeared, and then appeared on the warehouse interface and turned into a cartoon man in an independent space. The warehouse of the system is not a small black room with nothing, on the contrary, after entering the warehouse, it can be transformed according to the requirements of the characters themselves. It can be said to be very humane performance. However, it is impossible to stay in the warehouse for a long time, because there is no one in it, and it is very boring to be alone with the sky and the earth. As for the blue-eyed white dragon, the card is its residence. Therefore, Shu Mo will not force conscious summons to be stuffed in the warehouse, but it is an excellent place for Jin Muyan on the edge of evolution. It seems that I was holding back before. Shu Mo scratched his head and secretly said, will Jin Mu suffocate the kidney? No, Lin he will grow from here. After Jin Muyan left, Alice appeared next to Shu Mo, frowning humanely. Shu Mo, you have been exposed by doing this. What exposed? Shu Mo leaned over to adjust the projection of the crystal ball without raising Kaido. Alice walked back and forth, reminding. You let the blue-eyed white dragon go out and show up in front of S.H.I.E.L.D. You must know that they are not blind. And then? Shu Mo remained unmoved, swiping the projection to zoom in and then zoom in. The clouds inside were surging. You are pretty smart on weekdays, why are you a fool now? Exposure means that you will have a group of people in black knocking on the door tomorrow morning, and may also seal your company. Shu Mo couldn't help laughing when he heard the words. After connecting the touch points on the projection, the image of the aerospace carrier appeared. The non-chief is very excited. He drove all the big guys over Manhattan and was ready to launch a large-scale weapon at any time, but this happened to be within the scope of the telescope technique. Shu Mo, did you listen? Forget it, I don't care about you. Alice slapped the table angrily, but passed through. The light and shadow collapsed into particles and then recovered. Don't worry, in fact, the non-chief will help me answer my answer. You can only say that you don't understand humans. Shu Mo touched the crystal ball, projecting a picture of Nick Fury. Alice's face had no choice but to stare at it, and it looked more and more like Gary, except for eating. Aerospace carrier Nick Fury pointed to the scene of the blue-eyed white dragon appearing in the comics while holding the juvenile Jump comic magazine Yu-Gi-Oh! And said with no expression on his face. Coulson, you mean that the silver and white monster that just appeared is a character from the comics? Director, after comparison, the two have reached 90% similarity, so. Collison explained. So you said that this monster is a blue-eyed white dragon, so this cartoonist has superpower that summons characters from the comics? Nick Fury took it, muffled Kaido. Is that so? Collison responded decisively, yes. In this case, he is the god of the entire world, and you also find that other comic characters have not appeared in reality. Nick Fury stood up and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, speaking in a low voice. As a god, I draw comics every day? You believe? Collison was speechless for a while, and then turned to wonder. Then how can the two be the same? Since he is not a god, then he has either seen the blue-eyed white dragon and then painted him in, or he has the blue-eyed white dragon and specially drew comics. Nick Fury closed one eye and asked, which one do you think it is? Natasha came in and leaned on the table with a charming smile. Why don't I go to lie down? I believe it should be the first one. No, I think it's the second one. Even he knows a lot of people who have adapted paintings. This means that he has more power than S.H.I.E.L.D. And as far as this dragon is concerned, it can completely destroy aircraft carriers. Nick Fury opened his one eye and spoke quietly. Hill also interjected. Diaresis, since you are not sure, should you let him lie down here? It means to grab it directly. Hill must be cautious. If it is the first type, it will be fine, but if it is the second type, if the big. Is it possible that the nuclear bomb is dropped here? Whether it can be aimed or not is still a problem, not to mention the Fantastic Four who have refused to establish an ally with us because of the last incident. Nick Fury is careful throughout his life, never trying to beat the big one. He will only do it when something is more than 80% successful. The probability of this matter is not calculated at all, and he will never rush in and arrest someone when his head is hot. He is not stupid as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. How could he be promoted without a little ink? In this way, Natasha, you can sneak into the company to check it, and at the same time temporarily raise Shu Mo's risk level to level 8. You can't do it without an order. Since I didn't do anything, I secretly searched for clues. Look, Alice, this is human. Shu Mo pointed to the projection, spread his hand. How is it possible to do this? This kind of reason is too reluctant. Alice frowned, she couldn't see through. It's actually very simple. He waits until the team is established, and then he will force it. Now he is just a little cat. Shu Mo turned off the projector, drove Alice out to accompany Jiali, and went to bed with the lights off. In fact, what Nick Fury can do is to block the company, but he will not do it. In Nick Fury's view, blocking the company is not as cost-effective as sending a female agent to spy on intelligence. Shu Mo's eyes twinkled with stars, and he looked at the night sky, where the clouds of the sky aircraft carrier. Nick Fury was completely led by his nose when he founded the new company. I am a cat now and want to be a tiger in the future, but suddenly realized that the tiger in the future is nothing at all. Nick Fury lost right from the start. Next day. Marvel Comics. Hello everyone. My name is Jin Muyan, from Dongying. Jin Muyan smiled gently. He wears a mushroom head, the top of his hair is black, while the sides of the bangs and sideburns are white, and he wears a black base shirt and a white mid-length trench coat. Shu Mo, with a satisfied look on the side, walked up to the stage and greeted all the staff. Jin Mu is the youngest of you, don't bully him. Where? There is such a cute boy. He must be a little boy and a little boy. Don't worry, no one will bully him with me. Uncle Andy walked over and said with a guarantee. Jinmu is a black household in the United States, but under the operation of Skynet, it has become a white household that can no longer be white, and his life experience is miserable and touches the world. Jin Muyan was a little depressed and said, Shu Mo. It's okay, you can do all these tasks well, for the company. Shu Mo patted Jin Muyan on the shoulder to encourage him, and then left his tearful eyes and fled. Haha. You may be a little uncomfortable when you first enter the society, come here, and today there is a new person who just happened to meet. Andy talked happily, and walked into a very mature woman with big red wavy hair, flaming red lips, devilish body, slender thighs wearing scarlet short skirts, highlighting the exquisite beauty. As soon as the woman came in, the sun was overshadowed. All the women couldn't help but bow their heads, while the men spit down their throats like male dogs in heat. Ahem. Andy, who had seen him once earlier, coughed heavily. All the talents reacted and started to work, but their eyes swept over frequently. Come on, you all joined on the same day, he is Jin Muyan. She is Natalie Rushman, and she will be a colleague after meeting. After Andy introduced them separately, after a few conversations, he turned and left. I'll just call you Jinmu, how about lil brother? Natalie smiled without showing her teeth, twiddled her hair, said softly, and at the same time stretched out her pink and slender hand. This tone is full of charm, as permeating as a superb rose. When Jin Muyan heard it, there was a slight curve on his face, but he kept complaining about Shu Mo for giving him such a dangerous task. If one is not good, chastity will be lost. The woman in front of me was not Natalie Rushman but Natasha Romanoff. 10th level shield. Agent. Since Shu Mo knew that shield agents were lurking in, how could he let him be unprepared? Since there were not many people under him, they had to send the only admiral, Jin Muyan. As long as Kaneki doesn't wear a mask to reveal Kazuko, no one knows his true face, and now this is the appearance of joining CCG and becoming Sasaki. The comics were just unfolding and it was far too far. Jin Mu himself didn't know that it would grow like this in the future. It can be said that no one but Peter knew that this was Jin Muyan. Perhaps it might not be recognized by Peter. Jin Mu, you are a good friend of mine. Now the chance for my friend to be in trouble has arrived. Come on, Jinmu, I believe you can defeat this evil agent. The words Shu Mo confessed to him this morning flashed in Jin Muyan's mind, but it was useless, just pushing him into the pit. Kaido said with a smile of Jin Mupi, well, I'm going to work first. Instead of stepping forward to shake hands, he laughed quietly. Too small? No feeling? Natasha looked at Jin Muyan's distant back and was a little surprised. This was the first time someone ignored her appearance. She deliberately dressed as a personal assistant who hoped to be employed by the boss, but she didn't expect Shu Mo to not paint at all in the company. It's too bad, so I just apply for other positions and let's talk about it first. Maybe it's because you are too young to reach puberty? No, this age should be a time of restlessness. It's kind of interesting. It was Shu Mo who recommended the job, and he started the investigation. Natasha left with a catwalk twisting and twisting, leaving only a regretful producer and a roaring team leader. Time quickly passed by Shimon for lunch. The company opened a canteen for meals due to the expansion of staff and Rijin Dujin. Instead of ordering, he picked up his backpack and left the company. Natasha, who was preparing to order, was taken aback, but she was not curious. I don't want to eat too much in the cafeteria. Jin Muyan walked on the street looking at the bustling and prosperous scene, but he was thinking of his own past in his mind. Can't help but sigh. Jin Mu sat down in a restaurant and ordered a simple and clear order, a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. Jin Mu raised his head and looked at the man sitting opposite him, wearing a pair of black glasses, dark skin, and a strong body. Looks like a ruthless character. Jin Mu just glanced at it and then lowered his head to play with the phone. After 2 cups of coffee were served, he was about to reach out and pick it up. The man opposite wrinkled his nose and said in a low voice, I smell a very strong smell of blood. What did you eat this morning? Jin Mu's hand was stagnant, and then he just glanced at the man as if he didn't respond, and took a sip. Don't speak. It doesn't matter, I can smell it no matter what you eat. The man didn't touch the coffee at all, but put one hand on the table and the other in the back pocket of his pants, he said coldly. That's human flesh. Jin Mu still didn't change his face and didn't respond. He drank his coffee in his own way, as if he didn't hear it at all. But 2 small hills began to slowly protrude behind him, and the red traces covered by the clothes became more and more obvious. Just when the two didn't talk at all, but they were at a stretch. Jin Mu. Why are you drinking coffee here? Natasha stepped over. She was out to observe the surroundings of the building, but she did not expect to meet Jin Mu. The tense atmosphere was suddenly disintegrated by this shield agent. The man stood up without saying a word, looked at Jin Muyan deeply when he turned his head, and then left. Who is he? Natasha guessed secretly. Call. Jin Mu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If there is a real contradiction, his Kazuko will be exposed. This place is near Times Square, crowded with people. His task is to get the company to publish comics stably. Natasha's lurking is actually a waste of thought, and the company has no confidential documents or useful clues. Shu Mo asked him to come to the company only to prevent Natasha from investigating him, turning no clues into clues. Once there are clues, it is necessary to continue lurking. Shield. Bureau will not suddenly want to close the company one day. Otherwise, the agent is not exhausted abandoned? Jin Mu calmly finished his coffee, opened his cute eyes, and secretly said, "Is this woman a real coincidence? Is it on purpose?" And Natasha had already remembered the face of the dark man with her extraordinary memory, and planned to go back and search the information database. The two of them walked into the company side by side, and no matter how Natasha tempted Jinmu along the way, Jinmu was an Elmwood. "Let your hoe swing well, I just don't eat this one. Bai Wawa's steamed buns are not delicious, you think you are Dong Shang." Just as Jin Muyan and Natasha's latent and anti-latent decoy plans were stalemate, Shu Mo of course was a beautiful paddling. "Master, please give an order." A muscular man with the appearance of Schwarzenegger appeared in front of Shu Mo. He was the Terminator T-800. "Feel, it's a bit useless." Shu Mo touched his chin and said depressed, "T-800 is not that TX has no liquid metal to change, only one face needs to be repaired if it is broken. If ordinary people get it, they will be happy, but for Shu Mo, it will be useless. It is impossible to throw it away, or keep it in the warehouse for dust. Or just draw it." Shu Mo ordered T-800 to sit on the extra desk and copy the faint traces. Sure enough, it is a robot, there is no difference in copying, and it can be copied all the time without using a clone if there is electricity. Shu Mo is also thinking about plans for the next issue on his desk. Juvenile Jump is currently serializing 6 books including One Punch, Giant, Duel, Naruto, Shinigami, and Yu-Gi-Oh! There are 24 chapters in each of the 4 chapters, which can be said to be the standard of an ordinary comic magazine, but it is not enough for Shu Mo. There are only 6 books, only 4 more words, especially for the long-length migrant worker comics, even when Thanos snaps his fingers. When the time comes, I will really burn it into paper and send it on. So Shu Mo plans to increase the update, add another comic, and reduce the number of Giant stories. At the beginning, I chose Giant to explode the door of the market and become famous. Now the company is already a golden sign. The low-arm world like Giant can be serialized slowly. Even if it summons a 150-meter-long supergiant in Marvel, it is no use. The raffles are pitifully scarce. Shu Mo took the paper notes, sorted it out and sent it in writing without explaining it again. Next is the friend Mank. Just 2 are too monotonous, especially the Terminator is too short, the next issue will be over. Therefore, it is necessary to launch a new comic, and simply publish 2 good ones. As for which 2 books, it is necessary to think carefully. Then there is animation production. Currently, the animation, One Punch Man, is being advertised online and will be officially broadcast next week. Giant and Duel are in production, and then the anime of Shinigami and Naruto. After Shu Mo made the plan, he used the computer to send it to Andy's mailbox. It's a peaceful life. Shu Mo lay on the balcony, leisurely and calmly, quoting the collective Byakugan of Lorna, Gally and Alice. "Let Shadow Clone do everything by yourself, and even give it to Jinmu. Can you take it easy? It's okay to be idle, or else smoke it." Shu Mo was a little flustered. When he talked about pumping, he couldn't help pumping. Last time he felt a little bit less and his hands were itchy. Now the fan value has 6.8 million points, just try 1 million and stop. Shu Mo muttering to himself can't control his addiction to the lottery. "Congratulations, host, get any door. Now it's developed." Shu Mo turned over and collapsed. There is only 1 prize per million, but this is really worth it. The bright light dissipated, and the long-awaited object appeared in Shu Mo. The exterior is very huge, with a pink door frame and a door made of black metal inside. Any door. When opening the door, think about the destination, otherwise it will lead to an unpredictable area. Shu Mo was a little pleased. He put it on the doorknob and turned it slightly. The door began to open, and the 4 holes on the edge sprayed out bursts of steam. Lorna's bedroom, a transparent gap suddenly appeared in the air, forming a frame like air cutting, and then pushed like a door. Shu Mo poked his head out of it, closing his tongue quickly. It would be bad if Lorna found out. Crunch. Shu Mo tried a few times at home, and then his mind flashed. Why don't you go to an alien planet? The sandal star in the movie feels that the scenery is good. Shu Mo thought of this, but he reapplied the doorknob but found that the door could not be opened. Host. The effective range of any door is 10 light years, and the planet is far beyond the range. 10 light years, that's a bit. Forget it, just find it casually. Movie clips flashed in Shu Mo's mind, but at the end he didn't know where he thought of going. The door was released and he pushed open. Shu Mo stepped out of the gray planet, full of dust flying and yellow sand all around. Call. Shu Mo walked a few steps forward and saw some large buildings appear in his sight, which looked much higher than the Earth. Now is a relic. When you look up, you can see the earthy yellow star rings of the planet. It's boring. After Shu Mo visited the area, he didn't see anything worth visiting, and there was no beautiful scenery. He was ready to return on the same route. Yeah, this place has always been boring. A muffled and low voice suddenly sounded behind Shu Mo. Shu Mo suddenly felt the horror, cold sweat on his forehead, and a panic of terror in his heart. He didn't find anyone there at all. A figure appeared just as soon as he turned his head. How could this be possible? I'm curious why you are here. The voice behind him asked again. It's been a long time since no one else has come to this planet. I will come to see this past Titan star every year. Titan. Shu Mo heard the words, turning his head after a pause, as if mechanically stuck, and then a touch of purple still came into view. MMP. It's so big. Purple sweet potato essence is really you. Titan's call. The sky was full of yellow sand, and the wind was whistling, and the sand was rolled and hit Shu Mo's body, feeling very painful. An alien with a blue-purple skin, a huge vertical chin, a tall and burly figure, a blue and gold dress with golden shoulder armor and golden short boots appeared in front of him. He is the crazy Titan, and Thanos is Thanos. Shu Mo's face was frozen and his limbs were stiff. Even though Thanos was still 5 meters away from him, it didn't bring a sense of security. Even if the plot has not yet begun, Thanos may only have spiritual gems in his hands, the human skin, the shadow of the tree, who knows Marvel but does not know Thanos. Thanos seems to be very talkative, or it may be because now he came back to his hometown and met a living person, so he talked about it. The previous Titan is very beautiful, and at the same time it is the most technologically advanced and peace-loving planet in the solar system. Thanos did not step up, just said as he spread his hands as if embracing something. However, this planet disgusts me. Since there is no such word as killing, it's up to me to create it. Deep as an abyss, scarlet eyes stared at Shu Mo. Then who are you? Inhumans? Earthlings? Thanos stepped forward and asked with doubts on his face. Shu Mo's heart directly touched his throat, expressionless. Kaido, don't you know? Thanos obviously didn't have any murderous intent, but this creepy feeling let him know the power of Thanos. It seems that you are wary of me. In fact, you just need to talk about the process of landing on Titan without relying on warships. It sounded lightly, but the yellow sand began to fall, and an unspeakable sense of heaviness still rose. Shu Mo remained silent. Whether it was a comic or a movie, Thanos would destroy half of the universe. Such an overlord said it was okay to believe it. One of the biggest reasons why Thanos has not invaded the Earth to take infinite gems is because of fear of Odin's existence. The Lord of the Nine Realms looked old and weak, but his strength was extremely terrifying, as can be seen from Thanos' invasion after Odin's death. The question is, Thanos appears in the solar system. Does Heimdall, who monitors the movements of the Nine Realms, know about it? But still have to deal with the current situation. Shu Mo narrowed his eyes and stared at Thanos' hands without gloves. From the outside, he couldn't find the spiritual gem. It's best if you don't take it with you. At present, there is an arbitrary door not far behind him, which is swinging open at this time. As long as Thanos walks to where he is, he can see a spatial passage and an inner bedroom that is completely inaccessible to the surrounding environment. In this way, he can drive straight forward. Whether Thanos is afraid that Odin will not do it, or for another reason, it is impossible for him to discover this door anyway. Shu Mo quickly calculated that the intense pressure made him have to deal with it in various ways. Earth people can come to Titan without using a warship, and the ability to travel through space is still. Thanos spoke slowly, his face becoming more and more indifferent. He was the overlord of the Dark Quadrant, the king who confronted the Shia Empire chamber in the galaxy. No one dared to disobey, no one dared to refuse, no one dared to ignore it. He will get anything. He knew that there was a space gem on the Earth because this gem was thrown on the Earth by Odin himself, so Thanos didn't rush to think about it. Odin is an old immortal, and his sleep period is getting longer and longer, and he is afraid that he will die soon. Thanos shook his neck and said softly, "Earth, you look like you are traveling. I invite you to sit in my house." At the same time, The big hand pointed at the dark shadow in the distance. That was his battleship. No, it's time for dinner, I should go back. No, it's time for dinner, I should go back. When Shu Mo heard this, his eyelids twitched, and he sincerely replied in a perfunctory sentence, saying that his body muscles were tight and he was staring at Thanos intently. It seems that my orders cannot be passed on to the Earth. Of course, this is the place that Asgard is monitoring. In that case, are you really not going? The time is wrong. Well, if you have to go now. Thanos moved, strode forward, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. No one has ever dared to refuse my invitation. Shu Mo moved too and had to move. He couldn't wait for Thanos to come over. He might be able to see any door when he walked halfway. When Thanos saw Shu Mo coming forward, he smiled faintly. It's useless to resist. If you don't try, how do you know? Call. The wind roared, the smoke was everywhere, and the yellow sand covering the sky and the sun shrouded the two people's heads, dull, depressed and killing. Shu Mo decided to take the initiative, not to be led by Thanos, otherwise he would sink deeper and deeper. He moved forward silently from a slow step to a run, and almost instantly turned into a white phantom, and Thanos was extremely arrogant and still stepped on a leisurely pace. Call out. The strong sound of breaking through the air was left behind, and Shu Mo crossed the center line in just an instant. Thanos's eyes were calm, just a slam step, leaving a circular pothole suddenly violent, and at the same time he clenched his fist and threw it out. One is white and the other is purple. The two human bodies are very different in shape. The fists with huge differences collided in midair and time seemed to stagnate into purple and white. In the next instant, a majestic circular shockwave suddenly erupted from the point of collision, and madly poured out toward the surroundings. Rumble. The sound of the wind was obscured, and it exploded like a muffled thunder. The airwaves caused by the impact of the yellow sand immediately dissipated directly. The sand was trampled like a beast running, the surface began to deform, and an unfathomable crack that was nearly 100 meters long burst out without warning. This strength. Shu Mo flew backwards at a faster speed like a cannonball. He was shocked, and immediately realized that Thanos' own strength was far from simple as in the movie. Bang bang bang. Shu Mo seems to be as a rock that was thrown into the lake forcibly, slammed on the sand, and rolled over and over, all the way down. There were pits and pits everywhere. On the other hand, Thanos just slid back a little distance. The power has been crushed. At present, only 2 levels of strange power are completely insufficient. Shu Mo stood up and stared at Thanos without squinting, secretly calculating that he could only use other methods if he was not strong enough. Earthman, you are very good, so I have a little interest. Thanos then stepped forward and sneered. It's still too late to promise. A little bit of interest. It's too late to take it back. Shu Mo raised his hand, and a shining white card was sandwiched between his fingers. Scream, tremble, descend on the blue-eyed white dragon. Hold head high. The roar of a violent behemoth, the powerful momentum condenses, the wings that cover the sky and the sun, the slender body that is 100 meters high, and the deep blue eyes exude endless cold light. The silver-white reflection of the crystal-like body, the body surface is attached like a dazzling guy armor, with row upon row of fangs. The airwaves surged, and the settled yellow sand was lifted up again and washed towards Thanos. Shu Mo frowned, possessing level 4 tenacity and super regeneration skills. The rolling injury just now won't cause much damage to him. But this is not the true power of Thanos, not to mention how the comics are. Just the opening of the movie will knock Hulk off 2 or 3 times, clearly explaining what is powerful. Of course there is also the reason for the power gem. The blue-eyed white dragon is not his trump card. Papa. Dragon. Interesting. When Thanos saw this, he didn't change his color at all. Instead, he clapped his hands and said calmly. But this is futile, Earthlings. You need to suffer a little bit. The blue-eyed white dragon heard the threat from Thanos, his blue eyes were even worse, and the ferocious dragon head looked down condescendingly. The white and blue energy particles converged and surging extremely rapidly, the surrounding space was rippled, and the yellow sand was oscillated to disperse. A white energy ball formed between the fangs, and suddenly burst out in the next instant, spewing out a terrifying shockwave, and the air burst into a ring like being stirred. Burst blast bomb. As if the dazzling beam of light from the sky was tearing the air, deafening sonic booms poured down. It engulfed where Thanos was standing like a meteor falling to the ground, and the dazzling white light was as dazzling as the sun emanating from the sky. From a high altitude, the yellow sandy ground suddenly flashed a little white light, followed by a dazzling glare, and the overwhelming momentum with unstoppable power scattered the sky and sand. Rumble. A wave of energy swelled the entire sand like a savage behemoth, raging around the area like a ring. The Earth's surface began to vibrate again, and layers of cracks interlaced each other. When the sand fell like a shower of dust, it was 50 meters wide in diameter, and a bottomless circular pit appeared in front of Shu-mo. This power is equivalent to 3 LV3 white wave balls. Shu-mo was slightly surprised, because it was not easy to compare when hitting at high altitude. Now it can be seen at a glance when it hits the ground. This power is not enough. A red light bloomed in the center of the pothole, and as Thanos whispered, the red light became more and more conspicuous and turned into a dazzling ball of light slowly into the sky. In the red ball of light hanging to the same horizontal line stood unharmed Thanos. He looked at Shu-mo coldly and sneered. The gap between you and me is too big, give up. Comic again, damn Marvel Universe. When Shu-mo saw this, his pupils suddenly shrank into needlepoints, angrily said. Before that, he didn't think that Thanos would be unharmed under the blast bomb. At least the Thanos in the movie would vomit some blood before resisting without wearing gloves. But now it looks extremely relaxed. It's my turn. Hold your breath, concentrate, and don't relax a bit, because... The protective shield gradually dissipated, and Thanos floated down gently, bang. The sound of thunder like sonic boom on the ground exploded in his ears. Purple light? Streamer? Phantom? None of them just disappeared out of thin air suddenly. Shu-mo was horrified to find that there was nothing in his dynamic sight, so fast. It was approached at this speed before. The difference in strength will only end the battle in an instant. The second half of the sentence was whispered to the side. Shu-mo's face was held by a huge purple hand before even the defensive posture could be deployed. At this moment, time seemed to pause. Shu-mo had only time to widen his pupils in the gap between his fingers, as well as the long-awaited whistling sound. The next second, with a tick, time starts to move. Boom. The violent sandy land resembled a wave, roaring and shaking, and then the sand waves rose to the sky and fell like a torrential rain. The blue-eyed white dragon turned around in a daze. A pit nearly 20 meters wide was formed in the sand, and the quicksand rolled down. Shu-mo was lying in the middle with his brain full of blood, and Thanos stood aside. Roar. The eyes of the blue-eyed white dragon that the owner had been knocked down turned into red light, thunderous, and slammed his claws violently, tearing the air and making a sharp scream. Thanos raised his head to face the twinkling and sharp claws, without changing the color, and said plainly, "The Protector is very loyal. He stretched out his hand like lightning to greet him. Boom. The ground was thundered and deafening. The huge chilling paw and Thanos' palm rang muffled. Thanos is bigger than ordinary people, but compared with the blue-eyed white dragon, it is only half a palm. Even so, his palm is like a sky barrier and cannot be pressed down by a single cent. Then Thanos grabbed a claw finger, gave a light drink, arched his muscles and waved hard. The blue-eyed white dragon found himself swinging along with it, and then it rotated like a circle. Boom. The blue-eyed white dragon was directly thrown out by Thanos and fell behind him. Then he smashed through the hills in the distance, and plunged into the mountain and was buried deep in the rocky gravel, making the sound of the dragon. Just when Thanos sneered and couldn't help himself, there was a crackling sound of energy behind him. With a backhand block, 3 dazzling white wave balls hit his hand. Seeing Shu-mo, whose wound on his head healed quickly, Shunpo flashed again and again. Just as his forefoot left, the explosion from the sky seemed to be burning up. The powerful force carried the airflow, and the majestic energy exploded. The air wave lifted Shu-mo away, hurriedly stabilized his figure, and stepped on in the air. When the dust fell, Thanos' face was ugly, his left hand drooping slightly, and a huge wound on it was dripping with blood, dripping on the yellow sand. "Boy, you angered me," Thanos said with a grinning smile on his livid face. As soon as the voice fell, the long red light in his eyes suddenly burst into the sky. Heat ray filled with extremely high temperatures and shot towards Shu-mo. "I'm Thanos. Thanos is an eternal family born on the Titans of Saturn's moon. Knowing all the philosophies of Superman of the eternal race gives him unsurpassed strength, endurance, resilience and agility. His skin is almost indestructible, especially when it comes to fighting cold, heat, electricity, radiation, poison, aging, and disease. At the same time, Thanos can also gather waves of mana energy or release plasma energy or universe energy through both eyes and hands. It is this power that makes him the overlord of one party." Shu-mo's eyes would send heat ray before he was shocked, and quickly threw 3 white balls to resist. "At the same time, I know that besides defense, the two sides have great differences in strength, speed, and energy, and the cards in their hands are not enough." Immediately thinking about it, he yelled anxiously, "System, all draws, hurry." The fan value in the system interface consumes 6 million points and is instantly cleared. It was originally used as a deposit, but I didn't expect it to be used. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a full set of ninjutsu and physique from 3rd Hokage. Time Machine Fragment X1, Sonic Skill. Wind Blade Foot, Hitaki Kakashi Skill. 3 Tomo Sharingan. All useful equipment. Shumo didn't have time to look at the system interface, because at this time the red light beam pierced the white light ball and shot at him like a bamboo. His skin has even felt the extreme heat, and there is no doubt that if he is hit, he will immediately lose his combat effectiveness. There are limits to the regeneration of vaccine people. Body Flicker Technique. Shunpo. Subconsciously stepping on the streamer, the speed that the naked eye can't catch flashes in the air again and again, leaving only an afterimage. Call out. Heat ray suddenly penetrated the afterimage and flew towards the outer ring. Shumo, who flew to the other side at high speed, had a chill in his right eye. In the blink of an eye, his eyes became red, and 3 gouaches were formed in it, and the unspeakable sense of obscurity emerged spontaneously. Even though these skills are powerful, I still don't look at them. Shumo's brain quickly rotated, scanning the skill bar, and suddenly found that a skill is just right for the moment. At this moment, Thanos shot up like a cannonball, and the powerful airflow began to rotate away, and the sand beneath his feet collapsed into a pothole. Boy! The big fist of the casserole slammed his head and covered his face fiercely from one side. The speed was so fast that Shumo could only cross his hands in front of him. Boom! Suddenly Shumo was swept into the sand with violent force like a falling meteor. The sand layer rose like a wave, and the quicksand fluttered all over the sky. A bottomless crack came out directly, spreading for hundreds of meters, and the Earth's crust began to shake. Ended. Thanos slowly fell, condescendingly looking down at the bottomless crack below. His left hand was already movable, and his strong resilience would not be long before he was intact. This terrestrial person is one of the few creatures that force him to emit heat ray and do everything possible. Thanos has never discovered that a terrestrial person can hurt him. It's incredible. Thinking of this, Thanos looked at the Earth. How mysterious is this azure planet? A trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. Hey, I said that I would be slapped in the face so early back quote. Suddenly, a shocking weather erupted in the dark cracks like an abyss. Thanos suddenly turned his head, and a deep chill appeared in his back. Like a violent beast, he placed his paws on his neck and slipped at any time, and Thanos stared down. I saw Shumo slowly rising from the crack, his face becoming more and more ferocious, and his right eye was shining bright red. In the next moment, with a hiss sound, the coat broke directly, the muscles all over his body violently, and his arms had 2 bumps. It looked very scary, and he stepped into the ranks of beast from a bodybuilder. A violent aura reached the clouds. It was originally the yellow sand all over the sky, and now it was rare to roll up the billowing clouds, and a heavy, depressive aura enveloped this area. Enter Ashura mode to be violent, and be awake for 3 minutes. If you exceed it, you will be completely out of control. Passive skills are doubled collectively. Sensitivity is LV6, Strange Power is LV4, and Toughness is LV8. Active skills increase in varying degrees. The mechanized voice of the system became a little high, and reminders came into Shumo's mind. At this time there is only one word in Shumo's mind: dry. Shumo looked at the star-like right eye, and the 3 jade in the left eye rotated clockwise and connected together, forming a boomerang-like inner hook. 3 Tomo Sharingan evolved into Mangekyo Sharingan, activated skill, Kamui. Shumo stood in the air, licked his dry lips, stared at Thanos with a surprised expression, and shouted, Shadow Clone Technique. Bang! 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 5 white smoke rose, 5 Shumo rushed out of it. Shunpo flashed again and again, standing in 5 directions and shouted. Water style, earth style, wind style, fire style, lightning style, 5 escapes, Dalian playing technique. Explosive flames burned, thunder roaring, rock and mud tumbling, floods and squally raging horns all poured down towards Thanos in the middle. When Thanos saw this, he acted, Bakudo number 61. 6 rod light prison, Shumo shouted, and 6 shining golden lights were inserted into Thanos' waist at the same time, making him immobile for a while. Rumble. A stream of elements composed of 6 energies slammed on Thanos, who was blocked from action in the blink of an eye, and the energy suddenly burst into the sand, forming an inverted cover, constantly invading the inner space. The ground is sinking continuously, forming potholes as wide as 50 meters and spreading countless cracks. The beast-like surface finally stopped shaking, more than twice as powerful as 3rd generation's Dalian Dan technique. The yellow sand had already blown away, exposing the dry surface, and the entire sand was disintegrated. However, it was not over yet. Taking advantage of the momentum to pursue, Shumo immediately rushed in, doubling the speed, and layers of sonic booms left behind him. At this time, Thanos was a bit scarred, caught off guard, and failed to break free in time and ate this set of Dalian bombs abruptly. Whoosh. Diaresis, Shunpo. Leaf-strong whirlwind. Wind bladefoot. Suddenly, Shu Mo kicked his big shin and kicked from the bottom to the top of Thanos' big shin. In the slow motion, Thanos was shocked that Shu Mo's speed became so fast. The big shin was kicked directly, and it was lifted up as if he had undergone a flattening operation. A dozen teeth splashed out, his neck suddenly rose, and the huge impact made Thanos lifted. Thanos only felt that he was in a trance like a bow and arrow flying out of the string, and the Avatar in this position shouted forward with his palms in both hands. 73 of Hado. Shuanglian Kango falls. Then the 4 clones also followed. Explosive flames spurted out from all directions, and the scorching high temperature made the air extremely dry, instantly engulfing Thanos. Perhaps Thanos' body is somewhat resistant to heat, but what Hado uses is that the soul is burned by the soul, and the pain is incomparably penetrated into the body. What? Boy, I'm going to kill you. Thanos burst into red light all over his body, powerful energy waves dissipated the flames, his eyes were red, and the situation seemed to fall to the top. This is absolutely not allowed. He is Thanos, the strongest overlord. Die. Pushing forward with both hands, countless ions began to riot like a bird returning to the forest, gathering together, making fists with both hands, with a red halo shining on the fists, and slammed out suddenly. The 2 big red light energy waves emerged from the hands, merge and merge like a bridge across the sky and the earth. Shu Mo didn't change his face when he saw this, just glared, and said flatly, Kamui. Kamui. As soon as the voice fell, invisible waves surged out, and a black spot suddenly appeared in front of Shu Mo, and the surrounding space began to distort, like a small black hole. A huge swallowing force spreads in all directions, and the red light energy wave lost straight and was affected by the swallowing force and deviated from the orbit, slowly spiraling into the black hole. Buzzing. The menacing red pillar was still rubbing the air the moment before, and the next moment it slowly sank in as if moths were throwing into the fire. From a distance, a red stick was swallowed by a dark hole. Space ability? Thanos' eyes widened and he exclaimed. Space ability is extremely rare in the universe. What he misses day and night is the space gem. Is this human being used to land on Titan? Shu Mo narrowed his eyes and muttered in his heart. Fortunately, Kamui has also been strengthened. Kamui's weakness is due to its slower speed when absorbing objects. It is completely impossible for him to use it to target Thanos to twist it, but such a straight external radiation is naturally fine after violent reinforcement. Shu Mo did not make Thanos stunned for a while. The air on his feet disappeared again and again, and the 5 clones drank softly, Earth style. Yellow Spring Marsh. Earth style. Earth flows in a big river. Bakudo number 26. Bent light. 61 of Bakudo. 6 rods light prison. Flame bomb. Suddenly the ground around Thanos softened into mud and flooded, and the mud under his feet turned into a night body to form a huge swamp, and the strong suction dragged him down. 6 golden light flakes reached his waist, and suddenly several burning fire meteors appeared in the sky, and they smashed down from the top of Thanos' head while rubbing the burning air. Drink. Thanos has a hideous face, blue veins burst out, and his eyes are scarlet. The huge energy flow rushes through his body, smashing the mud flow, pushing his hands forward, and the crimson protective cover is covering his head. Rumble. The burning rocks bombarded the energy shield, like water waves rippling. The superkinetic energy hit the shield and began to sink, shaking up layers of smoke. Light wave ball. 3 blue balls with big shining and dazzling white balls burst through the smoke and hit the protective cover one by one. Boom. The loud sound of the rock breaking the sky, the vastness of the thunder, the explosion of fire light soaring into the sky, the majestic energy invaded the protective cover, the click sound. The next moment it engulfed Thanos. The airwave washed everything around. For a time, the earth is shaking and the mountains are shaking. A deep pit nearly 100 meters wide was blown out. In the heavy black smoke, Thanos, in the center of the pit, crossed his hands and protected his head, panting and standing on the spot, his whole body covered with flesh and blood. However, all of this is not over yet. Shu Mo's Ashura mode is sober, and after only 3 minutes, he falls into an unconscious state. At that time, Thanos can completely kill Shu Mo by flying a kite. The next moment, a light flashed in the black smoke, and Thanos held his breath, and a dreamlike fascinating light came out around him. This is Bakudo Bent Light's use of light distortion to obscure objects. A hand reached out like lightning and patted behind Thanos. I want to repeat the same trick. Thanos quickly turned back and grabbed the protruding hand, clasped his 5 fingers tightly, and then pulled and threw Shu Mo severely to the ground. How could Thanos, who had been beaten twice, miss the opportunity and stepped on it suddenly, and the poof turned into white smoke, but a stone was kicked and exploded. Body replacement technique. Shu Mo appeared in the open space of the two-step sway, his toes hit the ground, and Shunpo jumped across the space in an instant, like a slash of an axe. Wind Blade Foot. Konoha Gale. Thanos raised his hand to block this heavy offensive. He wanted to catch it backhand but rushed to the air. After 3 consecutive kicks, he had to block one by one. The corner of Thanos' mouth raised a sneer, and Shu Mo, who kicked his feet, felt a huge force spread through his body, and his whole body was shocked into the air. Ling's foot powerpoints were constructed frantically, Shu Mo gliding in the air like a flat ground, looking at Thanos with iron. After the Ashura mode was passively doubled, he was still at a disadvantage in power at level 4 strange power. But it doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't make a difference before. Bang. Shu Mo disappeared in place, launching a thunderous attack on Thanos. Wind was blowing under his feet, and afterimages were left behind. In addition to being called Dr. Ninjutsu, Third Hokage knows most of the physical arts, but because of his age, he did not learn 8 inner gates. Otherwise Shu Mo will be faster. Now after the rage, his strength is slightly weaker, but he regenerates faster than Thanos. Other than that, the speed and defense of the two are almost the same. As the overlord of one party, Thanos' knowledge swallowed all the Eternal Clan and learned superb fighting skills from an early age. Every blow of the two men in close combat was majestic and agile, and they could make a sonic boom with one punch and kick. The hard ground became fragile like tofu, with pits everywhere. Boom. 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 During the extremely fast moving, the sky exploded frequently, and layers of burst clouds shattered. With a deafening sound of muffled thunder, Thanos only heard the sound of howling and breaking through the air, and suffered a heavy blow to his back. The severe pain spread to the bones of the whole body from the hit point, and the next moment it flew out like a cannonball. Just like Shu Mo before, he fluttered and rolled on the surface. When he stabilized his figure and looked up, there was still Shu Mo standing next to Shu Mo. Clone? But I didn't see it rushing over before, it was just remote interference and damage. Shu Mo smiled. Look around. Then Thanos suddenly came over, and the 4 directions connected to rise up purple-red sky like square pillars to cover this space of heaven and earth. 4 red yang formation. Thanos, you are done. Shu Mo smiled and smiled very happily. Don't be too lucky to meet Thanos who has no gems. If he brought the psychic scepter, he would kneel before 3 moves. There is no one in the skill bar that can defend against the psychic storm. The speed of the two is almost the same, as long as they touch lightly, they can directly play GG. Of course, if Thanos wears a psychic scepter, Shu Mo won't fight at all, and ran away in a rage. Thanos cared about Odin and Sorcerer Supreme and would not choose to chase. Multiple Shadow Clone. Bang, bang, bang. The enchantment was instantly full of Shu Mo clones, and the heads were moving. At the same time, he looked at Thanos kindly, and shouted, "What the hell, Thanos?" Shu Mo waved his hand, and countless clones rushed down immediately, and Thanos was directly overwhelmed by the sky and sun. The physical strength is exhausting so fast, there is no more energy to develop Kido and Ninjutsu. Shu Mo listened, and Thanos was a little bit sorrowful for a moment when Jun Yango's frightened sound came into his ears. Reunion 3 doesn't seem to be filmed anymore. Let's go straight to the finale. But the next moment he slapped his face, boom. The mountain burst and the ground broke, and when he turned his head, his face suddenly became dark. 4 red yang formation collapsed directly. Om. The sky was agitated, and a little bit of light was condensed, as several stars pierced the sky and bombarded the 4 red yang formation at an unclear speed. Rumble. The horrible explosion swept across the 4 places, the gust of wind whistled and carried the shockwave to blow everything away, the dazzling skyrocketing mushroom cloud rose from the ground, and the cloud collapsed. In the distance, Thanos pointed to the 4th gate muzzle on the warship that Thanos was sitting on, and blue particles flowed around. Inside the ship, a commander, Chitauri, who was wearing a helmet and armor with a horny head, issued an order to the ship's intelligence system. Quickly search and aim at that human. He looked at the billowing black smoke in the distance, and the owner Thanos took the small warship back home to visit relatives, but actually came to test the attitude of the Lord of the 9 Realms. Maybe Odin was sleeping, maybe he didn't care about Titans, or maybe he didn't want to cause any conflicts, so Asgard didn't take any action until just now. But things were absolutely unexpected. A human appeared, and the entire battle could be seen through remote monitoring. The commander's body was cold and his limbs trembled. No matter how he thought his master was at a disadvantage, it seemed that there was no way to be surrounded by Europe. Then he fired a star-level high-energy particle cannon, destroying the barrier like several nuclear bombs, and flew the warship over. In the billowing smoke, the sand on the surface has turned into crystals, and the surface has turned into lava as scorching hot. Shu Mo was rushed into the ground in an embarrassing manner, and blood dripped from his forehead with a bewildered expression. Thanos, you were actually calling someone. Before stepping in the air, several stars hit the barrier and exploded so violently that it was devastated and disintegrated. Shu Mo was blown up completely unexpectedly. Fortunately, he was not in the core area, and the powerful shock wave knocked him to the ground, but not far away was Thanos lying undead. At this time, his blue-gold battle armor had long been cloth strips, and his whole body was blood, not a piece of it was not a wound. The avatars of the vast ocean were all washed away by the wind and turned into white smoke after a painful meal. Thanos Wheelie stood up, heard the words, grinned openly at the corner of his mouth and said, I'm afraid the power that suddenly exploded has already reached its limit. You must know that at the beginning, the power and speed of this earthling were not enough. Without the help of treasures, he could only be equalized by stimulating his potential. When Shu Mo was about to choke back, he thought of the system prompt in his mind. Host, there are 50 seconds left, please turn off the Ashura mode, otherwise you will enter an unconscious state after the time expires. Not far. Shu Mo also stood up and looked at Thanos, without changing his face, and said forcefully, I said, don't say it too early. I was panicking a group. If I turn off the violent mode now, ninjutsu, Kido and passive skills will be restored to their original state. Once the Dalian technique returns to its original power, it is only a little pain for Thanos, and it is not a concern. Shu Mo will lose the capital to fight Thanos, buzzing. The powerful turbines stirred the wind pressure, and the huge warship flew slowly to cover the sky and the sun, and the muzzle above was aimed at Shu Mo. Now what? Thanos spread his hands madly, and Shu Mo's face was a little painful under the pressure of the violent wind. Still the same. It's really clever, boy. I like you very much, be my subordinate, and share with me the darkness of the entire universe. Thanos did not become irritated by this, but showed appreciative eyes. The strength of this human being is completely incomparable with the Hei Yawu under his men. For a while, he aroused his desire to solicit. Hey, it's interesting, you are not afraid that I will go around preaching that the Overlord has stumbled under my hands, or will I use the annihilation cannon to get through the siege? Shu Mo moved forward slowly, smiling cheerfully, as if he was a little moved by this proposal. The Overlord aura is not what you can imagine, boy, what's your name? When Thanos saw this, he laughed and put on a very haughty expression, and then asked. Call me, Kakarot will do. Shu Mo walked up to Thanos, stared at Thanos and looked at each other. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly became tense, and then stretched out his hand to make a handshake. Thanos' eyes shone brightly, and then he raised his hand. Host, 20 seconds. 19 seconds. The two hands gradually approached, and just as they shook hands, Shu Mo suddenly patted forward, and Thanos was not surprised but showed such an expression as expected. Snapped. Shu Mo's slap was caught with one hand, and the other hand clasped the attacking fist. Thanos grinned. The strong do not need to surrender. I can see that you and I are the same kind of people. But it's over. Thanos grasped firmly with both hands, and the spaceship above his head dropped a blue light, and the two began to levitate and fly slowly. At the same time, a small muzzle condensed a wave of particle wave cyclones, aimed at Shu Mo. It's over? It seems that your eyes are not so good. Shu Mo didn't panic, instead he smiled and satirized. Varied. As soon as Thanos heard it, he could feel something crawling into his nose, and then. Sorry, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this. I actually killed so many people, I'm a beast. Thanos immediately let go of his hands, tears in his eyes like a fountain poured down, crying and running back to apologize. 9 seconds. Shu Mo ignores the system's prompts, and now Thanos has the black technology of Doraemon. The apology bug can be said to be a fish that can be slaughtered. However, I'm going to kill you. Sorry, I actually said that. Thanos roared with a sullen face, and the next sentence shed tears, but Shu Mo was horrified that he didn't bow to apologize. The special black technology has failed. Shu Mo's face changed drastically, and he jumped out hurriedly. Shunpo plus instant body technique flashed in the air frequently. Thanos immediately jumped out of the anti-gravity halo and roared. How dare you humiliate me like this? I was wrong, and I was swearing. My heart is so painful. A look of guilt appeared on his face after the roaring shout, and he said affectionately, Don't go, please accept my apology. Ah. Kakarot. Shu Mo tried his best to run through the air. How could the black technology fail? No, it was half done. Thanos is now physically autonomous, and his mouth and face are firm. 5 seconds. Blue-eyed white dragon. Shu Mo yelled to the ground with a hung sound. The blue-eyed white dragon spread its wings and burst out of the mountain. The blood on his hand kept flowing. It was broken when Thanos threw it out. 4 seconds. Exit Ashura mode. Shumo immediately jumped onto the blue-eyed white dragon and screamed. The next moment his whole body was drowning. It was too painful to fill his whole body with unprecedented fatigue. Ashura mode has been exited. All skills have been restored to their original state. Sharingan has stimulated advancement to remain in Mangekyo, and the cooldown of Ashura mode is 1 week. Kill him. Thanos lost the first hand, and after a bitter battle, he had no spare capacity to catch up, so he directly ordered the warship to launch the largest particle cannon. Then he looked nervous and apologized. How can you kill? You can't do this. I want to apologize. Commander Black ? Face.